Sometimes, yeah. Good.
All right, I'm going to call the August 13th meeting of the Macon County Board of Commissioners to order. We've got a full house tonight. I'd like to welcome all of you. There's some serious business discussions to happen tonight, and we also have some fun items.
How many people looking at outside?
So, Sheriff, how many people do we have outside?
5.
They need to be invited in, and we'll just need to scoot closer and let them in.
Heard them. Wow. They're bossy around here.
Mine will take, that'll be all 2 minutes.
Mr. Jones said he was here for moral support. He ain't coming in. But you got it.
All right, there's a couple seats up front here. Somebody needs to know this.
Act like you like each other. Scoot over.
All right, any announcements, Mr. Manager? Commissioners? All right, let's all stand and observe a moment of silence. I want to ask Clerk Mike Decker to lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Would you join me in reciting the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up our public hearing for tonight. 6:01 p.m. It's a continuation from our last meeting of July 9th regarding the telecommunication tower proposed from application from Verizon Wireless for a 175-foot monopole at 575 CR Cave Road. Jack, is there any further information from your department before we move forward?
Additional documents, I think. Mr. Chairman, if you'll recall, at our July 9th public hearing, the commissioners and the public alike, those that were in participation, did have some questions concerning both the tower that was being proposed as well as some additional towers and the location. We also, Ms. Dodge had submitted some pictures that where the balloon had been flown, and she would requested that those be shared with the board members and with the Verizon representatives. So what I have done, and as you'll recall, we could not, following the close of that hearing, we could not discuss any information outside of that hearing. So this is the first time that you all will have seen this information. The email correspondence that you'll see here that I've laid in front of each of your monitors, it is the email that I sent to Mr. Jim LaPan that came and presented that night. It has the questions that the board members had asked, as well as those questions that the members of the public had asked as well. Also attached, you will find color photographs of the pictures submitted by Ms. Dodge that she had submitted the day of the meeting last time, and we unfortunately could not get them into the agenda packet. But those pictures with that balloon have been included in this email thread as well. Mr. LePan responded to these questions in the form of a letter. And it was not actually Mr. LePan responding, it was Benjamin S. Herrick of Falk and Foster Real Estate. Mr. Herrick he is with, again, Falk and Foster Real Estate, and the questions that were asked here are answered in this letter response that will be at the close of this email packet. This was, again, I laid out the questions in the email, and he responded via letter or via email to the planning department, and that was then passed on to me. So those are the contents of the email packet. Just for a short summary, the pictures from Ms. Dodge are in here, and if you just want to look over this letter, again, we cannot share information outside of the public hearing or discuss this matter outside of the public hearing. So the letter that is at the close of this email packet, that again is addressed to Joe Allen of the Macon County Planning Department, this is Falk and Foster's response to all the questions that were submitted, and I then relayed to them in an email.
Is there a representative for Verizon Wireless present? I think it might be appropriate for a representative of Verizon Wireless to simply read these documents into the record, for the benefit of the record. Likewise, I think Ms. Dodge has some information she, by way of email or otherwise, that needs to be read into the record.
Now, Falk and Foster is the one that submitted the response.
I understand.
And then Verizon, what you will also find, I've attached another, under your email packet, another letter here to Joe Allen from Verizon Wireless. And what this is a propagation map. It's a propagation map for 170 foot above ground level, and then it shows you that same propagation at 100 foot above ground level. That was a question that was requested of this board. They have since provided that on August 9th, 2019, so it is included as well. And Mr. Attorney, with that being said, this is all the information, the correspondence that has occurred between the county, members of the planning department, Falk and Foster, and Verizon Wireless since the continuation of the public hearing on July 9th.
Yeah, I do think that it'd be appropriate for Ms. Dodge to be given the opportunity to read any correspondence that she sent to county manager, or to the planner, or the ordinance administrator, to present any pictures that she didn't have an opportunity really to present last time, and to discuss those. Likewise, the paperwork that's been prepared on behalf of Verizon Wireless and, you say Falk and Foster?
Yeah, and it's about a 7 or 8 page response.
Yeah.
Does that all need to be read into the
I
record?
think it does. I think it's the appropriate way. I know it takes a little bit of time, but the purpose of the public hearing is for people to hear what the issues are, and after they've heard what the issues are, they have an opportunity to ask a follow-up question if appropriate. This board likewise has that opportunity. If only the board's reading this, then,
Right.
then the public does not get an opportunity to necessarily hear those words.
Would it be appropriate if a representative from Falk and Foster just kind of went by the question, or you would want the?
Yeah, I think it's just best to read into the record exactly what our commissioner will be reading.
Mr. Herrick, correct?
Yes.
I presume you're in place of Mr. LePan?
Yes, actually, it was Mr. LePan replacing me because I was at a dance competition with my kids in July.
Well, welcome. If you don't mind,
Verizon or Falk?
Falk and Foster. Falk and Foster is an agent of Verizon Wireless. They hired us to secure the.
You're a subcontractor. Mr. Herrick, I'm gonna swear you in, if you don't mind
Sure.
stepping up and
Oh.
put your hand on the Bible here. You swear and tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I think you've heard what our attorneys are questioning. I'm sure we'll have some questions on top of what you're going to have
Yes.
reading in. So turn yourself loose.
Okay, so this was a response letter that I drafted in response to the email questions that were presented. This letter should address all of the concerns raised by the citizens who came forward during the July 9th, 2019 public hearing in which the tower project was discussed. We understand that this matter will be discussed again on August 13th, and I also look forward to the opportunity to answer these questions in person. Please ensure that this letter becomes part of the record. There were several questions presented at the meeting, as well as some photographs of a balloon test, as well as a PowerPoint presentation of a proposed alternate location. I'll address each of these questions separately. Jeffrey Studd's preferred alternate site. Mr. Studs presented a PowerPoint presentation showing a proposed alternative location for the tower. We appreciate the effort that Mr. Studs put into this report. Unfortunately, the other parcel will not work for two main reasons. First, because of the shape of the parcel, there was no way to meet the setbacks and fall zone requirements for a 175-foot tower. The width of the parcel is simply not large enough. Towards the southern edge of the parcel, it is possible to locate a 175-foot tower and meet the setbacks, but that would place the tower very close to residential homes. The location we have selected is much further away from any residential homes. Aerial photography is included below to illustrate this. And the aerial photo is from the county GIS system. According to the county GIS data, at this point in the parcel, the width of the parcel is approximately 451 feet. The undeveloped portion of the parcel north of the blue line on the above photograph cannot accommodate the tower because we would not be able to meet the setbacks. The portion of the property south of the blue line would locate the tower much closer to residential structures located on this parcel and the two parcels on the west side of Cedar Arcade Road. The area that we have proposed is further from all of the residential structures. Further to this point, below is a depiction of the property with the 200-foot fall zone. This view clearly illustrates that the property cannot support a tower of sufficient height and meet setbacks. And then there's a picture of with a 200-foot radius. And it shows that the 200-foot radius is outside of the property lines. The second reason is an engineering reason. The property is already at the southern edge of the search ring, quote unquote, where Verizon Wireless engineers determined would be an acceptable location for network purposes. The basic search ring is below. We included a parcel map with a red boundary for the search ring. All of the parcels located in the search ring were either turned in as a candidate or discounted. The primary reason for discounting a parcel is lack of interest from the property owner. As you can see, the preferred location parcel is located to the south of the search ring and would not provide adequate service for Verizon Wireless's needs in this area. Given that this is the southern edge of the search ring and all of the facilities work on line of sight of each other, 175 feet is the minimum height necessary to provide the service objective in this area. While Mr. Studs believes his view might be improved by moving the tower to an alternate location, this type of move will not be materially different from Mr. Studs, but would lead the tower to be much closer to other residential homes who may have the same complaint for the alternate tower location. Balloon test by Elizabeth Diane Dodge. The view from Ms. Dodge's patio is indeed wonderful. The first photo that she shares of the balloon test she performed is telling. The orange balloon is hardly noticeable from this view. The tower will be a galvanized finish, which will stand out less than the orange balloon. This view also illustrates why the 175 feet is required to reach above the tree line. A lower tower height would not work as well, if at all. At 175 feet, it would be cost prohibitive to employ a stealthing techniques such as the one suggested by Ms. Dodge. The base of the tower would have to be much wider to accommodate the artificial limbs, and this would also eliminate co-location opportunities from this tower, as the engineering would account for artificial limbs in lieu of additional antenna arrays, so more towers would potentially be required should other carriers identify a need in this area. Other stealthing techniques would draw more attention than a standard monopole layout, which is generally considered the least obtrusive tower type. Other questions by neighbors. There was a question about other towers in the area that could possibly accommodate Verizon Wireless. An FCC tower registration search revealed no towers within 2 miles of the proposed site. And then I included a screenshot of the FCC ASR results. There was also a question about noise impact from the tower and/or generator. The generators that are employed these days are for emergency backup power only and need to be exercised only once a month for about an hour. They are the size of a typical household generators and produce less noise than a commercial lawnmower. The tower itself does not produce noise. There was a question as to the timing of construction. We are not told of specific construction plans. This is Verizon Wireless's plan. This is in Verizon Wireless's plan to get ready for construction as soon as possible. It is possible that their budgets can change over time, but the current directive is to get the site ready to turn over to construction as soon as we can. Number 4, there was also a question as to how many people this tower will benefit at certain height levels. There is no simple answer. This will aid everybody using Verizon Wireless in this area and the surrounding areas at the 175-foot level. Lower heights would not benefit anybody, as the tower would not integrate with the rest of the network very well. It would provide almost no benefit. The tower will be available to other carriers for co-location should they determine a need. There was a question about removal upon abandonment of use. This is required by the ordinance, section 154.08G, which requires a written agreement related to maintenance and removal of the tower to be signed by both Verizon Wireless and the landowner. Verizon Wireless will comply with all aspects of the ordinance. There were questions related to the other towers that were possibly visible to certain properties in the area. According to the county, one of those towers is a public safety tower located off Hamilton Bridge Road. In North Carolina, it's been my experience that public safety towers are generally not available to commercial radio carriers for their use. A smaller, older tower is believed to be used for either radio or television broadcasts. It's also in the area just off Wide Horizon Drive. This tower is not in the area needed for Verizon Wireless needs, nor is it believed to be structurally capable of today's typical antenna arrays. Again, there are no towers registered with the FCC within 2 miles of the proposed site. There was a question about lighting of the tower. This tower is not proposed to be lit as it does not exceed the FAA 200 feet above ground level threshold. Sheet C13 of the plans and specifications outlines there's no lights on the tower. There is a switch on, switch off light at the base for workers who are there after dark, and it also has an automatic timer in case they forget to turn it off after they leave. This is similar to a porch light. I hope this response covers all of the questions that were raised. There were engineering and ordinance reasons why we could not locate the tower in the preferred alternate location proffered by Mr. Studs, and we do not believe that the tower will present a negative impact on the view presented by Ms. Dodge. Attempts to conceal the tower would limit its functionality for co-locations, thus necessitating additional towers in the area, and we did an exhaustive search and found this particular spot to be the least intrusive on all of the neighbors. Please provide this response to any neighbors who requested additional documentation. And I did email this to Mr. Studs directly.
Mr. Herrick, do you likewise want to present the letter that comes on Verizon's wireless stationary
Sure.
on their behalf?
Yes, this is a letter dated August 9th, 2019, to Joe Allen from Bilal Sheikh, who is the RF engineer in charge of the project. Dear Mr. Allen, I am providing this letter to address certain concerns that were raised by neighbors relating to the height of the proposed tower. I work in the radio frequency department at Verizon Wireless's Charlotte office, and I'm familiar with the project known as Wells Grove NC, located at 575 CRK Road. Verizon Wireless has 2 main reasons for proposing a tower at the 175-foot height. First, there is a demand for Verizon Wireless's service in the area. Second, if the tower is expected to be available for co-location by other carriers, the structure will need to be tall enough to accommodate them in order for them to provide adequate service as well. Regarding Verizon Wireless's needs, a shorter tower would not provide the level of service needed to satisfy the objectives of coverage and capacity for the south side. The propagation maps included highlight the differences between installing antennas at the 170-foot center line versus the 100-foot center line, as some have suggested. As you can see from these maps, the coverage will be compromised for Verizon Wireless at a 100-foot antenna center line. The terrain and tree density of the area make propagation challenging, and therefore transmitting with height above the tree line is necessary to achieve the objective. Additionally, any carriers looking to co-locate will require height for the tower to be usable. And then I've got extra copies of this if anybody wants them. And attached to this are propagation maps with the 170-foot center line and the 100-foot center line. Thank you. I've got 2 extra copies if anybody in the audience wants one.
I think it would be appropriate this time if Mr. Herrick wanted to add anything further on behalf of Verizon Wireless, that he would afford his opportunity to do that. And then I think at that point it'd be appropriate for the commissioners to ask him whatever follow-up questions, if any, that they might have.
As you can see from, let me just go over the propagation maps this is a sort of the legend is on the last page, but you can generally see it's like a heat map. The hotter, the better. So at the 170-foot antenna level, which is what we get with a 175-foot tower, you can see the green area reaches significantly further. Also, the red and orange areas there's much more of those. At 100 feet, it doesn't cover nearly as much as we need to the north. The blue areas and the white areas are no coverage. So they really needed it to go a little bit north. It's gotta be this tall to get over the hill. And this project meets every criteria in the ordinance.
What hill are you trying to get over?
It's got generally these work in line of sight. So it's got the top of, the antennas have to see the other antennas around it. So if it can't reach over the hill by sight to see the other antennas, it won't work very well.
Are any questions from the commissioners? I asked all questions from the public be held for a minute until I get you sworn in. Any questions from the commissioners?
Yes, sir. Over on page, I don't know what page it is, it says balloon test by Elizabeth Diane-Dawes on that page, gray
Yes.
light area. At 175 feet, we taught prohibited to employ stealthing techniques such as the one suggested by Ms. Dodge, and that should say F and others. The base of the tower would have to be much wider to accommodate the artificial limb. And this would also eliminate election competition from this tower as the engineering would account for artificial limb. So how big and more of a base would it be?
It's the base is much bigger, to the 1.5 times bigger, and then
You can't see the base, correct?
right. You won't be able to see the base, but the limbs take up a lot of the structural strength of the tower, so you wouldn't be able to get the antennas up there that you would on a regular monopole. Does that make sense? So you have a certain level of wind shear that the towers are required to withstand, and those limbs is basically a sail. So if you have a hurricane or something, the limbs take a lot of the wind resistance, and it is reducing the structural capacity for antennas. So you have a it could work for Verizon possibly, but it wouldn't work for anybody else. And there's and depending on how many limbs you put on, it shrinks the availability for engineering for antennas.
Does it have guys on it?
No, there's no guys.
Any further questions?
Do you know if Verizon intends to deploy what technology they intend to deploy on the tower?
Well, right now, they're building all of these towers for 4G, but the antennas are what determine the technology. So 5G antennas could be installed on this tower when they're ready to deploy 5G.
Our previous speaker, Mr. Johan,
Mr. LePan?
Yeah. We're having a history in our county of people putting up cell towers and nothing going on. You have no control of that, correct?
Well, that's correct. Now, this is a Verizon Wireless project. So if you have a tower,
Was the other?
I'm not aware of that one.
We can make you aware.
If Verizon Wireless needs to remove a tower, I will certainly make them aware.
It's been there for 5 years and nothing wrong.
And it's owned by Verizon Wireless?
Some real estate company probably, I don't know, but they're the ones who made the application.
Well, the ordinance does require a removal if it's abandoned.
It's not been a ban, ain't never been a month put on.
I suspect that's not a Verizon Wireless project. Because here's what,
Do you know, Jack? It's not a Verizon.
there are companies that are in the market of building cell towers to lease to the carriers. American Tower and SBA and Crown Castle are the three biggest. So they're basically building them on spec, but I don't, so the specific one you're referring to,
Two of them.
there's two of them? I would have to, if you gave me the addresses, I will dig. If you give me the addresses,
One's
I will
on Windy
dig.
Gap, one's on Rainbow.
I will find out who owns those and what the problem is, and if they're not being used, the ordinance requires them to be dismantled. So that would be,
I think there's a time frame.
that would be an ordinance.
I think if the county desires for them to be removed, they're gonna have to contact the owner, and they're gonna have to start the process of putting them on notice to remove it, and then take the next step to refuse it.
So what kind of assurance can you give this board that Verizon will not do the same?
Because Verizon is the carrier. Verizon is the operator of the tower. It's for their antennas to go up in the air. It's not, Verizon Wireless isn't building this tower to lease space to other, it's not like a shopping center where you build a shopping center and hope the tenants come. That's the spec tower that you have currently. This is a Verizon Wireless tower for Verizon Wireless to use as soon as they can.
I think one of these, I'm gonna call it a dead tower. I believe the lease has still been paid on it, even though it's not active. So a person is still receiving the money that the lease paid. I think that may make one difference.
Well,
As
let's,
long as they're paying the bill,
well, the ordinance requires the tower to be in use. And let me see if I can find the section here. Well, that was 154, wasn't it? 154.08? 154.08G. See if I put this in my packet. Okay. From the ordinance, the owner of the proposed wireless support structure shall record in the Macon County Register of Deeds office a letter of intent prior to the issuance of the building permit. The letter of intent must contain conditions of approval, written authorization that the support structure may be shared by other providers, written authorization allowing Macon County to locate public safety equipment, a written maintenance and removal agreement concerning the wireless support structure signed and notarized by the lessor and the lessee, that's the property owner and the carrier. The letter of intent must include language that binds subsequent owners of the wireless support structure to the original letter of intent filed in the Macon County Register of Deeds. So that's the letter that we have, that we've signed, that requires us to remove the tower if it's ever abandoned.
Point out that 154.12 requires continued compliance throughout the time that the tower is in existence.
I thought there was a specific removal provision.
In the old ordinance, there was, there's not.
Okay.
You won't find it in that one.
All right, we'll try and move along. Any further questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for addressing all conditions in the ordinance. Seems that you're familiar with ordinance. And we thank you for that, and these other issues do not affect the case before us tonight. But,
If there's a problem with a Verizon Wireless tower, I will make them aware of it.
this doesn't affect the ruling on this time. So we thank you. And you state that you have addressed all conditions in the ordinance.
That's correct.
And, I think Jack can verify that, Joe. We thank you for that.
Thank you.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you know the answer, but it'd be great to know. Do you know if Verizon has any plans for an additional tower in Macon County?
I do not, they don't share that with everybody. It's kind of a need to know deal, and I'm low on the list of people who need to know things.
We all have.
I know. I can see if I can scrub the spreadsheets and see if there's another one in Macon County, but.
We're no different than every other rural community we need.
Right.
So anything that our planning department could do to work with you and Verizon would be very good.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't get me wrong, we want these towers.
Well, and Mr. Allen has been phenomenal to work with. He's very professional and he knows what he's doing. And you guys haven't asked that.
We want them often.
Yes.
Squirrel when you find one of them.
I'll get the addresses and, we'll follow up with you guys.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, we have a few people sign up to speak. Mr. Jeffrey Stubbs. Jeffrey, welcome back, and we'll swear you in this time. Please put your hand on the Bible. Swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. You mind stating for the record, so I swear you in the last meeting, that everything you stated at the last meeting was true and correct to the best of your knowledge.
It was.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Stubbs, and I'm here as a homeowner and representing my mom, Sybil Stubbs, and the Stubbs family. We live at 285 CR Cape Road. When I presented to you my concerns about this tower on the 9th, I had not prepared a visual. I know probably some of the concepts I explained are very hard. It's hard enough looking at the maps, but to understand what I was trying to convey. So I'm going to go back through some of the same materials, which is my alternate proposal, and at the same time address and rebut the points made in Mr. Garrett's letter, which I've read in great detail. So anyway, we'll go to the first page here. This information is being presented in the interest of offering an alternate preferred tower solution and also in the interest of thoughtfully addressing the objections raised to the preferred solution by Falk and Foster. The intended objective of the preferred solution is to satisfy the overall project needs, I'm not against the tower, as I stated last time, while minimizing the aesthetic and property value impact to residents in near proximity to the project site. The preferred tower site outlined in the following slides maintains the original project objectives. Verizon expands its network. The landowner generates desired revenues on a tract of land. Macon County citizens benefit from increased cellular capability, and home values and the quality of life are protected for those living in close proximity to the tower. Now, if you look at the next page, this is the neighborhood in the immediate vicinity of the proposed tower. Cape Road runs down the middle of the diagram, and you can see most all the homes, including mine, is on the left side. And we all look towards the left and down into the valley. So most of our homes are designed to look down and to the left. As you can see, the current proposed tower site, which is that left blue X on the diagram, is imposing that it places the structure immediately amongst a row of homes and is in direct view of all the addresses in close proximity. We all look out that way. The preferred site places the tower on the right side of Cape Road. There's significantly more undeveloped forest in this land and fewer homes. If you look on the other side of the road, you see a tree over there. The tower, the preferred site, is similar in elevation and slope, because I know that's something the cellular company takes into consideration, and is owned by the same individual. The preferred parcel of land is actually 1/3 acre larger than the current site. So I want to give you an idea of what is at risk. This is the aesthetics and property value that will be impacted. This is the view from 267 CR Cape Road, very top of the mountain. And Dowdle Mountain, which is what Cape Road runs across, offers us a spectacular vista. We've lived in this property for 50 years, as have most people along the road. This is the view from the peak of the mountain, and this was a similar photograph from where the balloon testes are over there. Second page, beyond that, is the view from our home at 285 CR Cape Road. And it's important to note the other homes along Cape Road look down into the same valley, as I mentioned, have similar views to this one. We don't live at the top, and Miss Dodge definitely has what I call the God view. She sees way, way out. So any tower, she's gonna see a little bit of it. But the rest of us look to one direction and kind of in a more narrow breadth of view. Turn to the next page. This is what the tower will do to that view. And I just want to make some notes. That tower graphic was taken directly from Verizon's drawings. I didn't make it up on my own. That is the drawing that was on their blueprint. And I scaled it and brought it into the drawing. If you look at the inset on the very left side, you'll see a little dot on top of the tower. That is the balloon. So you can see it in the actual big drawing. But basically, I took a photo with that weather balloon and then superimposed the tower. That little mark to the left of the tower actually says 179 feet, because they're not accounting for another 4 or 5 feet of lightning rod. So at this point, we're at 179 feet.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Going back to this
Sure.
slide, where would the tower be?
The tower in this picture would be to the right, I believe, of those two leftmost trees. So you see those 3 pine trees or whatever to the, yeah,
And elevation wise?
down, a little bit more down, because she's sitting so much higher than us. So it would be, I mean, I can visually show you something.
That's okay. Where would it be?
If you go to the next page, this is the same view, same exact view. This is the same picture as this. Different day. So you can see, for us, those lower on the mountain, which where most of the homes are, that's what it does to our view. Okay. Staying on that same page with the tower, I mentioned the lightning rod tops at 179 feet. As more antennas are added, the width of the structure becomes more imposing. When I say width, I mean the stuff at the top. Their drawing shows 4 arrays, and you know they want to rent the space. I understand, so as they keep building that out, that top is going to become more imposing than the horizon there. And basically, your current ordinance allows Verizon to add about another 15 to 20 feet through a very minimum process. So once they do that, which I would imagine they would, we're going to be at 200 feet easy. So just keep that in mind. So if you go to the next page, I show the preferred parcel of the land. The parcel on the left is where the current site is, and then on the other side of the road where there's other homes, this is the other parcel. It's basically 9.36 acres, whereas the other is 9.01, and it's owned by the same individual. The next page, if you look at the same drawing with the elevation marks on there, you see that the elevation is very similar. So I'm not saying go on this side and then fall down in a big hole and you can't get your tower up. It's pretty much the same height there. So the land is similarly usable on that side of the road. And so I conclude from that the transmission view from the top of the tower, however high you all approve it, for above the tree canopy is roughly the same on either side of the road. And again, you heard Mr. Herrick mention how you need clear line of sight. So you just get above that tree canopy, you got a view off both sides of the mountain, which is possible from both sides of the road. If you go to the next chart, I will address him saying that there's not enough room on that lot. So basically, if you see the circle I draw, I used your site to measure across one of the wider portions of the lot, and it is 390.4 feet. So you can calculate using the safety setbacks. If you look at the line at the bottom, a tower of 170.2 feet is possible on that parcel, and that is meeting all your safety fallback standards. So whereas he's applying for 175 feet, you can go across the street and get a tower that's maybe 5 feet less. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. Go to the next page, I'm talking about the zone that Verizon was interested in. Now, this is a diagram I got from Mr. Herrick. It's in his letter. I took it and reproduced it over your site, and it's accurate, but so you can see it more clearly. And basically, I just wanted you to be aware of that because we'll look at it later on here. If you go to the next page, I wanted to talk about the logic behind Verizon's search ring. So you sort of want to ask, what's the science or calculation to determine that box to begin with? I looked at it and tried to make sense of it. I know he's got some propagation maps, which I understand. He did share those with me, but I understand what he's saying there. First of all, one would expect a circle coming off the tower rather than a square, because radio waves propagate out in a circular pattern, so I don't quite understand the box logic, but that's not necessarily for me to ask, but I wanted you to be aware of that. In his letter to the Macon County Planning Department, Mr. Herrick states there is no simple answer in determining how many customers would receive a communication benefit for any tower located within their search ring. So this tells me Verizon seems to be saying anywhere in the search box is going to be an acceptable tower site. But the logic of that is interesting because many of the parcels in that box are of a significantly lower elevation. In fact, some of them are 60 to 80 feet below the current proposed site. So if you're saying anywhere in there is acceptable, and I put a 175-foot tower on it, and it is already starting 60 to 80 feet below where they're currently proposing it, how can you say it's going to have the same radio performance? Particularly when we just talked about being able to see over the trees, being able to see over the mountain. Logic doesn't work with me. So logic dictates that all other things being the same, a tower at the crest can see and transmit farther via a shorter tower. If you're up higher on the mountain, you can lower the tower to see the same view. That's a very generally accepted logic. But to their benefit, and to be fair, I went out and looked at the Verizon propagation maps that are publicly available. And it appears that a tower would benefit
those of us that are south of US 64. So if you look at that page at the bottom, you can see the blue marks. I used the same database Mr. Herrick did in his letter. He put in 2 miles, there's no tower within 2 miles. I put in Macon County to see where they were, and this is what came up. So you can see Franklin in the middle, a lot of towers kind of at the top of the diagram, only a few towers at the bottom. The star indicates roughly where this tower would go. Makes sense to me. There's definitely an area there that's not covered, so I understand why they're targeting the general area. Go to the next page. I wanted to actually just look and see what kind of coverage they offer. Now, these are the coverage maps that are available on the Verizon site. I put in my address, and looking at Cave Road specifically, that little black dot is where I live. It's hard to discern any pattern on the coverage map that corresponds to Verizon's search box and need for a pattern in this, because I don't see a boxed area where the color changes, or so I still don't quite understand the logic of their box. So one could conclude from looking at this map that either Verizon site is misstating its network capabilities to try to sell their services, or the borders of their search box for the new desired tower is fairly flexible. Its coverage appears to be pretty good in the vicinity of Cave Road, and in fact, on their site, you can see the little net below, it tells me that I have 4G LTE quality is excellent at my home. You go to the next page, and I'm looking at the coverage in Franklin in general, just because I want to see, okay, if we take the area out now, what does it look like? And if you look on there, you can see in surrounding areas, we see Franklin, the town in the middle is pretty well covered, but gaps definitely exist, as you would expect in the more rural areas farther from the city. Again, that black dot is still my home. And I want to make this point, just to be fair, I'm utilizing the Verizon coverage maps in the presentation. That should not be interpreted as a statement that Verizon does not need a tower in Cave Road. I'm not saying that. The intent is to illustrate that any new tower in this region would serve to reinforce the existing network capability, and therefore the exact location and height of a new tower is flexible in achieving a positive result for the community. Now, if we go back to his search box here, and you'll notice the 2 blue X's in the bottom right-hand side. Given the discussion of coverage on previous slides, stating that a tower on the alternate site will not be helpful when we're only moving across the road is a questionable argument at best, as Verizon's current site is already on the margin of the search box. That X on the left is their proposed site, the X on the right is where I'm saying they could put it. They're both at the margin of the search box. So the search box is either valuable or it isn't, but he's barely in it as it is, and I'm saying just go across the street. It's difficult to believe that Verizon would pursue a tower that had negligible effect for its network. I don't imagine they picked that site that wasn't valuable in some capacity for the network. Doesn't make sense there. Hopefully it doesn't to you looking at it graphically. I want to show you a 3-dimensional view of Cave Road on the next page. This is from Google Maps. I wanted to try to get a feel for how Cave Road sits. You can see coming in from the lower right and how it curves around and then back to the right again. It sits on the very ridge of the mountain. And all the homes are lined up against it. You can see most of them are on the right. The X on the right-hand side of the road is the proposed site. I'm saying take it over there onto the left side. And either one will have a clear view of the valley, which is illustrated with a propagation line. So we can see down to the Georgia border from up there on one side. Okay, so now I want to, because I thought this was kind of the strange portion of the letter that he can't camouflage the tower. I don't understand. So Falk and Foster's letter to Macon County Planning Office states that it would be cost prohibitive to camouflage the proposed tower. However, there are many, many examples of camouflage already in use across our nation, so the costs are obviously bearable for cellular companies. In fact, Falk and Foster and Mr. Herrick specifically have been working to install a tower in the Whispering Pines area of North Carolina, as indicated in the photo. I took this directly from an article. This tower is disguised to look like a tree and is apparently going to be effective at a height just above the tree canopy. 119 feet is what is stated in that article. And it's interesting to note, as part of that project, Mr. Herrick made the following comment: the tower will be able to accommodate 3 other carriers' antennas. That tells me that co-location is possible on towers that are disguised and below 175 feet. I see it here, there's levels of antennas on this tower. It's not the greatest camouflage, but it is camouflage. And then he made a couple other statements where he said generally cell towers provide service within a half-mile radius, and a mile is a long way in a radio frequency engineering these days. But if he's telling me that there's not a tower within 2 miles of my house, I'm not quite sure how we're going to talk to that tower anyway. Now I know we can because my phone works, but that logic does not make sense. So again, I'm questioning their whole propagation, their explanation of propagation in general. You go to the next page, I show examples of various camouflaging currently used in the United States, and they are varied. I just gave you some of the better ones. And in the case of the flagpole and the cactus, the antennas are internal and are fully concealed, which I think is a great aesthetic preserving effect. And you don't even see the antennas, they're inside the pole. A lot of people are doing it. So the next page, I want to talk about the law. As I know, in our last meeting, at least one commissioner cautioned the board that they have very little ability to specifically question the cellular carrier's need for a proposed tower. While this is true, and I studied the law, I agree with what you're saying there. While it's true, business needs questions only cover a very narrow portion of a tower project's evaluation process. It is important to note that this presentation does not seek to ask Verizon to prove the need for a tower. I've not said that anywhere in my presentation. Important points to understand, both the federal and state laws do grant counties ample discretion to thoroughly weigh tower build decisions. Counties can and do dictate height, camouflaging, and antenna co-location requirements. Counties can and do dictate tower designs that will not impose aesthetic burdens to nearby property. Counties can and do require carriers to purchase performance bonds to discourage abandonment of older towers. They do this in one of the other counties in North Carolina. They have to put a performance bond, basically like putting the money in the bank in case they walk away. Counties can and do address the electromagnetic energy transmission concerns towers pose. That was another one we said we weren't allowed to talk about. But in doing my research, basically the law says you can't put an RF or a radio frequency radiation requirement in your law or in your ordinance, but you can look at the permit level on case by case in case it is believed that the energy is unhealthy for the situation of towers. In the case of one of the lawsuits I read, they were putting a tower on a school, and everybody's concerned about the children, so they did write a minimizing standard for what could be propagated off that tower. So by law, you can limit that. I'm not here to argue that, I'm just saying you have discretion in that area, because that was one of the things I was sort of warned against or said that we couldn't talk about, not according to federal and state law. At the bottom, these are the applicable laws. One of the most helpful ones is North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 153A, Part 3B, Wireless Telecommunications Facility, and in that it states it's in conformity with all the other federal regulations there, and we'll go through all those. And I have to say, I've read your ordinance 3 or 4 times, you definitely fall up under this. You could be stricter, but you definitely, I certainly don't see any issues. I'm not a lawyer, but it was well written. You don't cross the line on any area at all. On a final note, I would just show the last slide and just show you that this is what happens when once beautiful mountainous regions where reasonable aesthetic and co-location standards were not enforced. This is what you end up with. Right? Multiple towers on top of hills, and just sort of general craziness. In summary, I'm hoping we'll make a thoughtful and reasonable decision. As mentioned in my presentation during the public hearing on July 9th, I am not against the proposed telecommunications tower. I'm also not in favor of presenting Verizon in a bad light. The company serves a very beneficial purpose to the American people. I can imagine how hard it is to secure tower sites. Utilizing the Verizon coverage maps in my presentation should not be interpreted as a statement by me. Verizon must prove the tower's need. However, coverage maps are publicly available and they are useful in illustrating that any tower in the Cave Road area is serving to reinforce network capability that already exists in the region. Stated another way, the alternate preferred tower site located on a plot of land very close to Verizon's proposed site and at a slightly lower elevation could readily serve a needed benefit to the community while minimizing the various impacts to those living near it. This alternative proposal is reasonable and thoughtful in that it does not seek to hinder Verizon from expanding its network. It does not seek to hinder a landowner from earning revenues on her property. It does not seek to hinder Macon County residents' ability to receive improved cell service. It does seek to achieve the project goals while protecting the property quality of life for local residents. I therefore ask the Board of Commissioners to use its discretionary powers and the laws that support those powers to reach a reasonable and thoughtful conclusion when considering the approval of this tower. I respect the request that this presentation and copy be placed in the public record. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stotts. Any questions from the board? All right, Ms. Diane Dodge. Okay. Rick Reed. Welcome, Rick. Hello. Come on up and swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yeah, I did. Well, proceed.
I'm here because this is very important to not have it, the tower where it's proposed in Clark's Chapel because of its impact on the community. Who is this tall tower for? we don't need it in Clark's Chapel, is a negative impact. People of Clark's Chapel don't wanna have it. There are very few benefits to us. Please don't allow it in our communities. Let Verizon find another location. Clark's Chapel homes look to the north and to the west. Not all homes do, but most of them do, because that is the view. And this tower will be standing up there on the north side of Clark's Chapel. And I just ask that you take this into consideration. Thank you.
So Rick, you're suggesting that you don't want it anywhere in Clark Chapel. Mr. Stoss made a suggestion, perhaps moving it a very small distance. Your suggestion not having it at all?
I'd rather not see it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that's not signed up who would like to address the board regarding this matter?
Did you swear him in?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yes, sir.
Didn't want
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Daniel Johnson. I'm right at the border of the
Come
tower
on up.
site.
We gotta get your name for the record and swear you in. We won't swear at you, just swear you in.
Oh, okay.
Put your hand on the Bible. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Can you state your name again for the record?
Daniel Johnson. I'm at 437 CRK Road.
Can you spell your last name for me?
Jimison. We're bordering the proposed tower site. It actually, the edge of the property is our driveway.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things I've done is drive around Clark's Chapel, and we have excellent cell phone service. I've got a negative 99 dB signal at our house. And I can do a tower search, and it finds about 4 towers. Of course, the one on 441 South is the one that we're hitting off of because of the west-southwest view. If you did allow a tower to be there, I agree with the first gentleman that it will cross the road. The tower where you're proposing is right in their view. And do you really need a tower in Clark's Chapel? We've got excellent cell service all over the road. I walk at the middle school, at Mountain View Middle Intermediate School, and I've got excellent service there. There's areas on 441 South, there's about 5 miles of highway that has no cell service whatsoever. Tennessee, out in that area, is no service. And there's several other places. My wife's family owns a farm up on LJ. None of those people have any kind of cell service. My wife's parents, before they got to the point where they couldn't go to their farm, they would have no cell service or phone service up in the LJ area. And I would think something up there would be much more, worthy of spending the money on. Because there's a lot of retirees up there and they can't call for help. I know when her parents were up there, we were always afraid that something would happen to them and they couldn't contact us. But that's basically what I was wanting to say, was just that I would support moving the tower across the road. And I would prefer you guys didn't put it in the lot next to us. And I'm also questioning the Verizon guy. I couldn't get my topo maps working, but is 175 feet enough to get across the top of Dotto Mountain? I'm about 30 to 40 feet higher than the cell site. I'm just right above it. And the hill's pretty steep right there. And you've got trees that are 50 to 60 feet tall on the hill. It seems like that wouldn't go across. I'm assuming he's going to hit the 441 South Tower and the Walmart Tower because they have to link with each other. he can probably get a signal. I've got a faint signal from the Walmart tower at our house. I think it's negative 112 dB. If I go up the road just a little, my phone switches. I have apps that tell me which tower I'm on, and I sometimes just drive around to see, to map out the network. And I have a question for the gentleman from Verizon. How is he going to get internet to the tower? Are they going to run fiber up the road? We have absolutely no internet service other than cell phones in our area. It says we get DSL, but we're at 18 miles, it says, from the D-Slam. Apparently, the telephone line goes way down toward Tessie, circles the whole area and comes back, and we're on the tail end. I've measured it, it's 18,000 feet. And anything above 9,000 feet does not allow DSL service. So one of the questions is, how does he get internet service to the new tower unless he's hitting off of these other towers? One thing I've noticed is when we have, on the weekends, when we have a lot of people in Franklin, my cell data speeds goes from 60 megabits per second down to 2 to 3. So if he's feeding the new tower off the old towers, will he have the capacity to actually benefit us? That was a huge concern because I just don't know how he's going to get the utilities out there. Anyhow, that's about all I've got. I was just questioning how he would get data there. Will it go over the top of Donald Mountain? And I also oppose the view thing, and I would be okay with it across the road.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
Any questions, Mr. Johnson? Sure. Have you seen this presentation?
I have not, but I saw his first PowerPoint presentation that he had. Sure.
Can you roughly, in your opinion, roughly how far apart are we talking about
There is,
site they're proposing?
okay, so
this site, as crow flies?
across the street, that parcel comes to a point, and it's on my sheet here too.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. How far apart it is?
I don't know exactly, but 600 feet maybe.
Okay. All right. Then the next question is, he has a sketch that is similar to yours, and where yours shows there's not sufficient space on that side of the road.
Right.
It appears from what I see.
Right, his
this
sketch is south of where I have mine.
Okay. It appears that he has positioned this in a different location further down on this parcel property, number one. And number two, it appears that maybe, I question whether it's 170 or 200 feet. Why is it 200 feet?
There's a setback, and there's a fall zone, and then there's a setback. So the ordinance requires a fall zone equal to the tower height, and then an additional 25 feet outside of that for a setback. So that's why we have the 200 feet on ours, because that's 175 feet plus the 25 feet.
And it's not reasonable from Verizon's standpoint to, it wouldn't meet Verizon's needs to move this tower 600 feet.
It would not.
Whatever that distance is.
There is an elevation difference, and that site is lower. I don't know exactly, because I don't have the topographical data, but it is lower, And they look at every piece of property that is reasonable, and then the RF department, they get everybody that says, when we call and say, hey, we've got a cell tower project, we think your property might accommodate it, everybody that says yes, the radio frequency department looks at every one of those, and they do an elevation and a lat and long search, and then they pick which one works for them. And if you want me to address the Whispering Pines, I can. Whispering Pines, I did work on a 120-foot stealth design over there. Their ordinance is really different than yours. So their ordinance requires a stealth tower and is limited specifically to 120 feet. So we had to do it over there. And that's, right next to the Pine Ridge Golf Course. Thank you.
Any further questions?
You shot with topo map. I assume that topo map was taken off of the.
Yes, sir. It was.
Right, so where he thinks we should be is between the 2220 line and this next line, which I assume is 2200. Where we're at is closer to the 2260 line.
I'm sorry, am I allowed to rebut on this, or?
We're trying to figure out.
Yes. You're about right on that one.
Okay.
So that's 22, 24. You can also bring in filter. So there's ways to make light change the elevation.
And these are all relative numbers to the fund.
Right. But you have to admit, it's very, very simple. It's just gonna ruin everybody's life, because we don't wanna go across the street for any feet of filter, maybe make a little bit higher concrete pedestal. Again, I go back to line of sight. How high is the tree line there? As already said, they have a line of sight above the tree canopy, which doesn't take 170 feet. So to me, it's like, well, what's the reason here? Now, I know you said we didn't build it higher there because that's what your ordinance was, but you did say it wasn't technically possible. So that's where I'm having a problem. So if it's technically possible to do it at a lower elevation, co-located.
Unless the property owner just says no, they don't want it there, potentially.
True. But I mean, that's true. But, it's, the other thing is your ordinance allows you to change the co-location and change the elevation. So if you say at 170 you have to co-locate three different carriers, at 140 you might only have to co-locate one up, you have discretion. So that's all I'm trying to say, there's some flexibility here.
So what I would submit to the board, to the commissioners, is the county has written a document and adopted what they think is reasonable, and that is the ordinance. And every ordinance is different. Every gap in the network is different. The gap in Pinehurst is different than the gap in here at our Wells Grove site. So we have to cover different things. And the county has adopted an ordinance, and we meet every aspect of the ordinance. Thank you.
Commissioner Shields, go ahead.
Since we weren't able to go see the site, are we moving from one side of the street to another side of the street to, we're gonna have another group of people here next?
I suspect. Mr. Jimison is south of the site. If we put it where Mr. Studs wants us, it would be right on his front.
Mr. Jimison, sorry, just spoke and said he supports us at the road. He lives on my side of the street.
Right, but
The other side of the road is the same landowner. So again, we have a similar equation here. I understand it introduces some other things, but it's a very equitable and similar piece of property owned by the same person. Will support a tower very close to the height that he needs. That's why this is reasonable.
Will it have the same amount of population interference or concern? Or we just
If you look at
fixing
the
problem?
drawing, yes, sir, if you look at the drawing, then you can see that there's very few homes, if any, right along there. It's all forest on that side. So as I understand, maybe somebody farther down might see, well, we're the ones in the immediate vicinity of the most affected. You have to really kind of take into consideration what's within a half mile of this thing, and it's us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions from the board?
Can we question Jack or Joe?
Sure. In fact, I was gonna encourage you before you close the hearing to recall Ms. Dodge as well as Jack and have them sworn to the information that they provided last week.
Thank you, Justin. Ms. Dodge, welcome.
We did have a few words to say.
I'm gonna swear you in, come on up. Ms. Dodge, you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are entering into a contract with a private company with no regard to our land values, neighbors, or views that make our county unique. To answer the letter Mr. Hendrick wrote, sent to the board, I had no way of getting a good picture of the balloon. And he was right, it was towering. Remember, I told you I almost fainted? He is trying to convince you that a 20-inch balloon floating with almost an invisible string is more visible than a 175-foot silver pole with large antennas on top. All you must do is look at the picture with the tower drawn in to know that this is not true. Jeffrey Stubbs has a good argument for moving this site. The only residential home close to it is Miss Bradley's. And every other landowner turned them down because we care about our beautiful property. This site is between two mountains. No matter how high you go, you cannot get over them. No tree grows higher than 90 to 110 feet. I feel like they are tricking the county in saying they need 175 feet. First, he claims they need it, but then he states they really don't know. And anyone knows a billion-dollar company can afford a little camouflage. It does not look like many homes will look at this tower, but just wait till winter. Everyone is going to be doubly sad. We cannot leave our infrastructure problems up to the private corporations to solve. We must plan in our communication needs for the future collectively and not like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Any
Dodge.
questions?
While you have her, I think you should swear to the information she provided last year.
My two letters that I wrote, you got in the record.
Thank you. Good, Justin. Jack, if you mind coming back up. Jack Morgan, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. I guess we're stating that the testimony you said at our last meeting is. That's correct and true. Thank you, Jack. Anything else we need to add? Any questions? I do have some questions for Jack.
Well, I'd asked earlier, the provisions of the ordinance have been addressed appropriately.
Yes, we would not, that's why we bring it to the Board of Commissioners, after they have done everything that is required of the ordinance by the planning department, we are to bring it to the commissioners for this hearing.
Has there ever been an application that you didn't present to the board?
We've asked for some, modifications before to meet the ordinance, but they've always done it.
So your office is comfortable with the presentations that we've heard and the design, and it's not up to us to design these things or pick locations. It's up to us to make sure that the provisions, the regulatory provisions in the ordinance are met. And you agree with everything,
And that's what I was trying to do.
It's also up to us to recognize the people who live in that community and think it has, regardless of what kind of ordinances. I would agree with that, yeah.
Yes, but that is commissioner's decision, not mine.
That's the reason it's here.
Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you, Jack. Any further questions from the board before I close the public hearing? Chester, any other suggestions?
No, not this particular.
Board going once, going twice before I.
If we choose not to act on it tonight, are we still can't go to the site?
I think it's incumbent upon those that want you to see the site to bring bring you what evidence they want you to see at the site.
But you can't go to the site.
You cannot do an independent investigation. You are here as a quasi-judicial body, and you make your decision based on the information that is provided to you in this hearing.
All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, portion. It's up to us to, make a decision now. We can, Chester, I know we've got a lot of people here waiting tonight, we can move this down the road later in our agenda if we want to.
You certainly can. You do not have to make that decision at this particular point. If you have business that you want to attend to in advance of making some decision one way or the other on this one.
Gentlemen, suggestions, motions?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that because of all the information that we were given to digest the first time we saw it tonight, is we postpone any decision until our September meeting.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I have a second. Discussion, Chester, any thoughts on that?
I do want to point out to you that you have an obligation under the ordinance, indeed under the law, to make these decisions in a reasonable amount of time. I can't tell you what a reasonable amount of time is, but, you do have that obligation to do it within a reasonable period.
And what's the date on the application? I guess that would be the official date.
We would go by the date that it was deemed administratively complete. Not the date we sent it.
August?
No, July, I'm sorry. This is,
Okay. Does delay affect, what effects does the delayed action have on?
I mean, they're ready to build, but, you know, if it's a question between a denial and a delay, I think we'd rather have a delay.
And I need a copy, I need to get a copy of the setting tower.
I have, I can give you for the copy.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Paul, Carl?
No. Thank everybody who came. That's the purpose of the public hearing. Either way, there's gonna be disappointed people involved when you're enforcing ordinances. They're not designed to please everybody. And, we do certainly appreciate the input from the community.
Can I ask one last question, sir?
Pardon?
May I ask a question, sir?
Certainly.
There's a motion on the floor.
If we, gentlemen, my only concern about this is if we do, follow the motion and we move this back to our September meeting, is what further information are we hoping to gain?
I would instruct you.
I don't know if we gain anything. I'd like to have a chance to review what we've got.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get to.
Like Mr. Shields never even got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the evidence would be closed at the time of closing the hearing.
Thank you, sir.
So this can't be anything that they do not leave here with cannot be sent to them or emailed to them or
It
talked
would be inappropriate if they close the hearing as opposed to continuing the hearing further to the September date. It would be inappropriate to receive additional information or to make your own independent investigation.
Staff, we had one, gentleman speak tonight about not wanting the tower at all. Did we receive any further, Jack, Derek, did we receive any other further communication from anyone's support or, nothing else? Just be in here, Mr. Manager. We have a motion on the floor to move this to our, kick the can down the road to our September meeting. All in favor?
Close it.
close the hearing and move to September. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, thank y'all. Thank you. I appreciate everyone else's patience while we work through that, public hearing. Please pass it to Mr. Beck.
But you need to close the hearing.
All right, we'll close the hearing. We'll move on to, our public comment period. I have, two individuals signed up, Mr. Lenny Jordan, Macon County Library on the general update. Mr. Jordan, will give us, just a couple seconds for the crowd to disperse here and get you rolling. Spread elbows. All right, Lenny, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I'll keep it short.
Thank you.
You're ready. Is it the truth?
For the record, my name is Lenny Jordan. I think most of you know me. You, the county commissioners, appointed me to serve on the Macon County Public Library Board of Trustees, and I am honored to be of service and devote time to making our libraries in Macon County some of the best in the state. I am the board chair and thought it only appropriate that periodically one of our members or I give you an update on library activities. All of the Macon libraries are wrapping up summer events and activities for young and old alike, so I felt this was the perfect time to report. I'll just cover a few of the highlights. The summer reading and learning program, like past years, was a huge success. The preliminary counts are as follows. Total sign-up for summer reading and learning, 960. Attendance at the programs, 4,729. STEM activities continue to be in high demand. Employers especially are interested in having a workforce with these skills. Our maker tools provide access to equipment and tools to learn STEM skills. Examples include computer science, engineering, technical tools, and 3D printing. One of the more popular tools is the memory lab. We could probably all use that. Sure.
Please proceed. I'm sorry, we're getting a reverberation in here. Thank you.
One of the more popular tools is the memory lab. No, it doesn't help us remember. It has equipment that allows people to transfer old videos and music to current technologies. So Gary and Ronnie, if you all have old movies or cassettes, you might want to take advantage of this.
What do you got?
These maker tools are available to all ages to use. This extends what is being done in the schools for the kids to older folks as well, as allowing students to leverage what they have learned in the school STEM program. The Macon County Library participated in the summer food service program from June through early August. This program provides lunches for those in our county considered food insecure. Food insecure means people who do not know where their next meal is coming from or do not have enough to eat. We serve almost 900 lunches. As you know, USDA provides the food, MPP prepares it, and trained volunteers and staff at the library serve the lunches. Like me, you all should be proud that our library works to meet this important need in our county. Hopefully one day this will not be a need. The Macon County Library also conducted its second job fair in partnership with NC Works. 20 local employers were on hand to recruit employees for their businesses and organizations. We hope this will turn into a monthly event going forward. The Hudson Library was busy too. The Books and Bites author series is always a big hit. The authors ranged from Civil War history in western North Carolina to the geology of the Highlands Cacher's Plateau. Kids Zone had weekly afternoon programs. This is a program that runs year-round. Nantahala continues to offer craft classes. This year, they added a watercolor painting. More than 20 people turned out to hear Anna Lee Rowland tell tales of growing up in the Nantahala community 90 years ago. I'll end by saying our libraries are so much more than a repository of dusty books. In fact, our books are not dusty and are still a vibrant part of the mix. But I hope from the activities I've just shared, you realize just how important the libraries are to our community. One more small fact. In June and July alone, there were 36,717 physical visits to our 3 libraries. Thank you for your confidence in the board, and most importantly, this resource you continue to support for our community. Thank you.
Give us a little update, Karen, on Nantahala. I hadn't been to a couple of, I hadn't been to the community in a couple of months.
We're waiting to hear the result of the capital improvement plan and what would be included, and are hopeful that the community library there will be included.
All right, let's just don't forget.
We don't forget at all.
I know you won't.
We will not
There's definitely a need there.
Thank you all very much.
Photograph this, because I'm gonna leave soon.
Emma, welcome, Emma. Macon County 4-H. Did you get to enjoy Cell Phone Tower 101? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Emma Baker, and I'm in my 6th year of 4-H. This past June, I had the opportunity to attend an event called North Carolina Citizenship Focus, which focused on state government, and I was able to meet our representative on our Senate. But this coming weekend, I will have the opportunity to visit a conference called North Carolina Youth Voices, which is part of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. Before I go, I wanted to introduce myself and a little bit about 4-H. So enough about me. Here is what Macon County 4-H has to offer. We currently have 175 members in Macon County, with over 6 million members nationwide, making us the largest youth organization in the country. We have 12 clubs that range from archery and shooting sports to livestock, sewing, crafts, chess, and hiking. Our ages are 5 to 18, and this summer we had more than 40 4-H'ers attend competitions and represent Macon County. A few things that 4-H'ers can be proud of. We are 4 times more likely to contribute to our community. We are 2 times more likely to be civically active, and we are 2 times more likely to make healthier choices. Our motto is to make the best better, and in conclusion, I'm very excited to go make the best better at Youth Voices and get to learn about what our county commissioners are doing.
Welcome. I hope you see some of these smiley faces when you're
We're gonna have breakfast, aren't we?
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Good.
And also, if I could get a picture with you all, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
You want to introduce this lady that's sitting right there? Somebody have something to do with it.
This is Mrs. Tamara Powell, and she's my wonderful board agent.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
You want to stand in front of us here? We'll all stand and.
Come on up here.
Gary, you want to come back around here? That might work.
Come up here.
Forefront.
She take you down on that, Jimmy.
That's right. I'm glad that
I see you clapping.
All right, additions to the agenda? Yeah, Mr. Manager.
If we could, Mr. Chairman, if we could move 9H to 9B, under reports and presentations. I spoke with Shelley earlier, and Shelley has a family illness she has to attend to and needs to get on the road tonight.
We'll take care of that.
Also, Mr. Chairman, if we could, add an item to old business, 10A, that would be a revised interlocal agreement concerning the SEC paving project. And I think, we have budget amendments numbers 47 through 49 that we need to add as well to the agenda.
Numbers, what again, I'm sorry?
47 through 49. To the consent agenda. And lastly, if we could remove item number 11B, That is
Detention
coming,
Center Medical Services
yes,
contract.
that is coming off under new business.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Lori, anything, Chester?
Yes, closed session to preserve the attorney-client privilege and to discuss a county employee's competence, qualifications, and other matters.
I understand we also have potential property acquisition to be discussed. Mr. Manager, is that correct?
Not
Yes,
aware
sir,
of
I
that.
do have an update on some things that we previously discussed. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Does that require instruction to agents for the county?
All right, there's also, making, under consent agenda, Macon County Sheriff's Office Resolution, budget amendment, is that one of those 47?
Yeah, that's one of the 47 through 49.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Can we get, unless there's any further changes, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. That was a motion by Bill, second by Commissioner Gillespie. Reports and presentations. Recognition of Special Olympics athlete Jason Hedrick and Coach Eric Call. Welcome, this is exciting.
Look up here.
Mr. Chairman.
Big Ronnie Bill wants you up there.
Come on.
We're honored to have Jason Hedrick here with us tonight, Macon County Special Olympics athlete, who, along with his coach here and playing partner, Mr. Eric Hall, they have qualified for the Special Olympics National Invitational Games in Nashville, Tennessee. They're going to be competing September 23rd through the 25th in a 9-hole alternating shot golf tournament at the Hermitage Country Club. So, Mr. Chairman, with that being said, if you want to present them with something there.
Congratulations on your efforts.
Jason, we want a speech now.
I hope you can carry your playing partners, Jay. That's all we got.
Show us that cash. Show us that cash.
I think Jason brought followers with him here tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on, Jay. Let's go right.
That's it.
Oh, that's fast. Thank you.
You'll represent us well. Appreciate it.
That's a good job. You can tell my passion, then.
Have a good
All
time.
right, son, let's go get Macon County on the board, son, so that's all right. All right, appreciate it, guys. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it.
And he wins when they can bring him
September 22nd. Thank you. Hey, man, appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jason. If you win, you gotta get a haircut.
Here you go. Here's your coach.
Oh, you got more? I can paint
Yeah. If I get hold of that other one,
Yes, sir.
do you have the name?
All right, Shelley, if you want to make your way on up.
The guy in the blue
Easing
shirt,
out.
what's his name?
We'll let them
Huh?
know now.
The guy in the blue shirt, what's his name?
Update on value health and community crisis.
Shelley, I passed out the handouts.
Okay. Oh, and that one too. Okay.
Oh.
I'll try to improve now.
I thought you meant
Well,
that guy
I first
there.
have to say, it was a pleasure, seeing Jason here tonight. I'll let you know, before we became Via Health and when we were Smoky Mountain, and sort of just the 7 western counties, Jason was one of our founding members of an advisory council, that I worked with, and he worked with us for many long years until his golf sort of, I think, became a little more important, so, it's really great to see him. Well, thank you for having me tonight. First, let me always start by thanking Commissioner Beal. He is such a strong supporter of not only Via Health, but more importantly, people with mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use issues in our region, and especially here in the community. So I thank you for your work with us, and he makes me work some too, so it's reciprocal. I don't know how many of you have seen the recent legislation that was passed in the last General Assembly session that made changes to the involuntary commitment laws. I know County Manager Rowland and Attorney Jones have been working on components of that. And basically what that law did, and pardon my glasses, I have to be able to read this, it really looked at individuals under involuntary commitment, how they were coming into custody, the kinds of evaluations and where they were getting their first commitment evaluations, and then looking at how transportation would be provided to those individuals. This legislation was actually many years in the making. It really came about probably 6, 7, 8 years ago. When hospitals brought in state hospital, closed hospital beds. We know that about 70% of the people that are coming under involuntary commitment are state funded. That means that they do not have Medicaid, they do not have private insurance, so there's a lot of problems in the system and giving these people placement. So over time, even though this legislation has occurred, it was really interesting to hear how local communities had began to work on the system and develop some solutions themselves, and I'll tell you just a little bit about that. But the main purpose of the bill was to reduce the number of involuntary commitment transports for first examinations to hospital emergency rooms, to increase the number and availability of first examination sites for people under involuntary commitment petitions, to broaden the number of the types of people who could perform those first commitment exams. And then also the state is trying to implement a physical health screening that would be done in combination with that first commitment exam. So this is in this legislation with these goals. It really now looked to what the requirements are for local communities. The legislation required 3 things that were stated that local communities have to deal with. Via Health in its role as a manager of state Medicaid funds, and our role in contracting with the providers who offer crisis services, really was to coordinate working with community partners, and they pretty much named those. Law enforcement, sheriff's department, county and city law enforcement, magistrates, the hospitals, and our crisis service providers. And counties, we've been engaging by keeping them involved in the process, and they have a piece of this too. So Via Health has really worked to begin the development of a community crisis plan. A second component to the legislation, and I think I see on the agenda that you all are going to speak about it a little later, the counties have been charged to develop a transportation plan which outlines in writing how counties will provide transportation to people under petitions, both in county and out of county. And the last thing it requires is that we develop within the community crisis plan, and VIA would identify training opportunities for individuals who are doing transportation for these involuntary commitment consumers. We do have training we do with law enforcement, but what the law requires if non-law enforcement is to transport, VIA will identify those kinds of training opportunities for them. So our piece is to work with the local communities to develop the community crisis plan. We did that by working with a group called Counselor Collaborative, and to help us facilitate the process, we held 8 focus groups, 2 here in the West. One was with Haywood, Jackson, Macon, and Swain. The other was with Cherokee, Clay, and Graham, and that was partly because of traffic patterns and healthcare systems. We had a wonderful, I was very proud of the West, as I always am. Our focus groups had great participation by all the key folks that needed to be there. And we really led people in the process of hearing about what's working, opportunities for improvement, where they're taking folks now, why they're taking folks for those involuntary commitment petitions, and really acknowledging that what law enforcement really would like to see come out of this. If there are any changes to taking people to the hospital, they ask for, those facilities need to be 24/7, they need to take anyone who comes, they need to be able to hold people, and so we heard all of that information. So we have developed a draft community crisis plan. We've sent it out initially, actually today, to participants in the focus groups. I'm going to be sending it to county managers and others who either were there or just so they have it as part of their review of the transportation plan process. And we're asking for feedback, input, and then we will take all of that and try to finalize the plan. So what we heard from our local communities is we don't want to make a lot of changes unless there's a ton of new money coming into our system to develop all of these alternate sites. We do have a behavioral health urgent care, which is like urgent care for people with mental health or substance use issues, but it's at the Balsam Center in Haywood County. And there's not enough money to do those in every community. So we are really trying to look at how we keep people from even getting to that involuntary commitment process, how we can work together to really try to lessen the burden for our law enforcement, for the people involved in the process, but acknowledging that law enforcement really has some real requirements that they would like us to maintain. So I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions about the community crisis plan.
Reports a little scary.
Pardon?
This whole report's a little scary as far as getting help to the people needing mental health.
Well, yes, and I know you have a full agenda, and I can come back and talk to you more about this, but I'm sure Commissioner Beal can help. So, as we get this legislation to work on developing alternative places for people to take people to, under involuntary commitment other than the hospital, knowing that 70% of those people have no insurance. So as in our response to try to deal with the proposed funding reductions from the General Assembly, both VIA and all the MCOs across the state, along with some of the provider organizations, have been working on a campaign called Care for NC, and those are the materials that talk about the impact of those state funding reductions. For VIA Health, over the last 2 budget cycles, 4 years, we've been reduced $85 million, and this is only for people with no insurance. If you have Medicaid, you're in a totally different population, and there are services for you. So we're creating a have and have-not system. Right now, they're proposing, the last figure we heard was a little over $18 million from VIA alone in the 2-year budget process. And we would be looking at the impact that would be for local communities. I don't know if you want to say, because we have refilled the coffer. I mean, we have used our fund balance to cover funding reductions, but after, it's actually been 6 years of funding reductions, the money is no longer there to continue to make up that significant of a funding reduction. We're not only not able to expand new services, except for some specialized opioid funding, which we're using for some projects here, but it's going to have an impact on the community.
It's all going to come back to the counties and the peers. I mean, these cuts cannot be sustained. We stand in danger of losing our crisis center, a walk-in center. We don't know if that's going to happen. You certainly stand in danger of losing Haywood, Balsam.
The behavioral health urgent care.
Yes. And so this is an issue of budget. And you hear a lot of this talk about, but when it comes down to the local need, These cuts are gonna be substantial, especially for our rural communities, especially there's 23 counties in the Valley. Out of those 23 counties, 18 of them are rural counties. And this week alone, we've probably had, I know we've had 5 IV involuntary commitments at the hospital. Nowhere to send them.
Because they probably had no insurance.
Have no insurance. Here's what's troublesome for our area. We have basically 2 providers, 1 provider, for every patient they see, there's 6 they see with no, they get no pay for. You cannot sustain anything like that for the behavioral health. When the behavioral health needs are neglected in your community, it affects the whole community. We all know that. So as we go forward, we are working on some things locally. No Wrong Door is up and running, and with an amazing impact.
It gives me goosebumps.
We started, Blue Cross and Blue Shield called today. Want to know if we could be a provider to Blue Cross and Blue Shield. No, we can't. We're doing the jail program with the sheriff because of his support, but when you hear about community care and what Shelley's talking about, it affects every family. Sitting here tonight, it affects every family in our county, depending on how far you live. And so it's very important, not only just to me and this board, but this whole board. And Shelley, we appreciate the update. We'll just have to see where the budget lands. There are going to be changes. I mean, you're going to see some changes coming with the standard plan and with other plans coming. So
If you have insurance, if you have Medicaid, you can get what you need. If you don't, the General Assembly has just gutted the funding for folks with no insurance.
And that's going to fall back to the county. You're going to see an increase in the ER. You're going to see an increase
Detention
in
centers.
calls to Robbie for 1073 patients, which are mental patients. And it's not just drug abuse, it's still the mental side too. So we have a lot of work to do, and we are working. We go back Wednesday. We meet again Wednesday afternoon in Greensboro about this very thing, especially for our rural communities, where there's not services on every corner. Family members still don't know where to go. But we're working on the navigation aspect of it, and we got to have someone to navigate them to.
I tell you another perspective, Mr. Deal, is the fact that 216 deputies for a total of 46,000 miles drove people who were needing those services somewhere in the state of North Carolina. 46,000.
As far away as Dyer County.
And I was
As
saying,
far as the coast of North Carolina.
That's Dyer County.
Okay.
yeah,
Never been there, so I don't know.
yeah.
So it's a real problem. You can put your head in the sand and say it ain't going to affect my family,
Yep.
but it already is.
Absolutely.
So Shelley's worked hard with she's in charge basically of communicating to all the counties in our region. She does a great job of that. And Mr. Chairman, we'll continue to work hard.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
9B, presentation regarding county safety program, Carl Smee, Senior Safety Consultant, East Coast Group, and Risk Management.
That's it.
Wow, technology is wonderful. Wow. Mr. Tate, Commissioners, Attorney Jones, Mr. County Manager, I'm Carl Smee. I'm with East Coast Risk Management, and here just to give you a status report today. Just a quick status report, what we've been doing and what we plan on doing in the future. It starts with, okay, who is East Coast Risk Management? We are your consultant. Okay? You have us on contract, and we do your workers' compensation claims management. We do your human resources consulting, and we also do safety and compliance issues as they arise. I'm not going to go into all the minutia and all the little detail, because you've had a long day already. So what have we done? Where have we been? Let's look at what our incident case rate has been. Right? Incident case rates. They've been pretty flat, even though we've added positions and added employees and added new employees, and we've had retirements, which meant experience and leadership has left, and we're left with newer employees that we have to train. Despite these challenges, we've managed to keep things flat. The types of cases we've looked at, there's just a fast list here. Most of them strains, sprains, back injuries, the things that you would expect in a municipality. How does that work out? What does it really mean? Well, our case rate for 2019 is right now at a 2.6. We were at 3.2. In 2018, this is the rate is coming down. The OSHA recordable average is 3.8. So we're under that. We're better than the national average at the moment. Okay. So we keep working on that.
Is this a 6-month chart?
That is an annual chart.
And
Yes, sir.
2019?
Yes, sir.
Through July, through June?
Through June of 2019. Yes, sir.
School year.
Correct. All right. So, what does all that mean? I like to break it down in a nutshell. What does that mean? I hate to just talk numbers. It means if we have a lower number of accidents and we can contain the cost of those accidents, ultimately, premiums go down. And by working with WIA Insurance and East Coast Risk Management, we have indeed seen our workers' compensation premiums come down.
Why is misspelled?
Thank you. How did that, we changed that? And yet, it's not changed.
You're gonna blame it on me, right?
Oh, Kyle's gonna hit me with a stick. Thank you, sir. So, I always say premiums have come down. Every time I talk to any business owner, that's a show. That's our go-to line, show me. Well, our premiums in 2016, there they are. And then you can see in 2017, 2018, and they're dropping, and they're dropping. So far, since 2016, if you total it all up, 144 grand just on premium. That doesn't count the indirect cost, and I'm not going to go in 2 hours of what indirect costs are. But just there's that. So where are we going? Now, I've given you a nice handout. It shows the details of the safety program. That's what we want to do. I mean, we want to do continued improvement in our claims and our cost containment. That's certainly something we're going to do. That's something we continue to do. We work with the manager's office all the time with this, right? We want to expand our accident investigation process. Okay? And the goal of that is to prevent reoccurrence. It's different than what when the sheriff's department makes an investigation or something like that. Now, it's a little different focus, right? We want to continue to streamline our communications with our insurance partners, right? And we want to expand light duty. And the reason for expanding light duty is when our workers' comp mod, which is the factor that multiplies the premium by, right? When we can have no lost time associated with an accident, those medical costs only count 30%. The minute we have lost time associated with it, those costs are 100%, they add in. So the lost time accidents dramatically drive your workers' comp premiums, right? But we also have a more aggressive safety program, right? Because the cheapest accident is the one you don't have, right? That's the way it goes. So, we want more emphasis on compliance and our safety culture, which means not just a rule book, but how we do our jobs. Doing the job every day. Make those things integral to what the county does, and therefore becomes automatic. And you don't have to always talk about the rules. It's just the way we do our job. Right? We want better tracking on our training, both the onboarding and the in-service training. We should be able to go, and this is our goal, this is what we're driving to, that we can sit down with any employee and say, well, this is the training they had when they came on board, and this is what they've had as continuing in-service training since. Right? And we want better communication with our departments as to what's required by regulatory agencies. You would be surprised, you know, somebody like Department of Health. Boy, they got just a few regulations to comply with, don't they? It's about that thick. Well, the OSHA book's about that thick too. And it's not what they do every day. So our goal is to act as a resource and help them. Right? We just can't say to any department, go out, construct your safety program and it's going to be wonderful and you're going to run it. And they have to know what parts have to be in there. Okay? So, what do we need from you guys? Well, from the commissioners, we need your continued support. You've been great at supporting the manager's office. We need your continued support to provide a safe workplace, free from recognized hazards. Some of you might recognize that statement. That's straight out of the OSHA General Duty Clause that they would beat us over the head with whenever there's problems. But that's what we strive to do. Okay? We need your understanding that paradigms might shift. As we start looking at regulations and we start looking at best practices, sometimes, well, that's the way we've always done it, it's one of the things that goes under, has to go away. So we can be better. Not just change for change's sake, but so we can be better. And of course, no one would be here in front of you if there wasn't something that said financial support. We may need some financial support. Okay? When items arise that are immediate and necessary. Now, trust me, guys on this side of the table, the management team's very committed. We're going to put any changes, any cost, we're going to run through the budget process so it becomes part of our normal operation where y'all have control, and oversight, and input on what we're doing. All right? Any questions? I've really pared this down a lot because I got a little feeling fatigue.
Just like, thank you.
Yeah.
Carl. I'd like to point out, Carl, going back and looking at that savings that we've accrued since 2015 here, 2016, we changed and went to a private carrier for workers' comp. And what that had to do, that put, as Carl said, that put the onus on us to kind of to step it up, if you will, and really, we had these folks telling us, hey, if you can work with us, if you can implement this safety stuff, if we can have these department head meetings and get that out there, then your claim exposure is going to go down. And as a result, as Carl said, that it has, and that promise that we were made, if we would hold up our end of the bargain, has rang true and is reflected here. Now, what the unfortunate thing is that $144,000 we saved turned right in and go to the health insurance now that continues to increase, but we're also, knock on wood, receiving some favorable numbers there this year so far with the changes we made to the health insurance. So we hope that continues.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll get this out of your way. Figure out how to do it. It won't recognize my finger. I do not want to shut off her recording. There. Right? Yeah, got it. Thank you so much.
All right, statement of intent to relocate SCC Burn Building Fire Training Facility and other SCC programs at the National Guard Armory. Don Thomas, Southwestern Community College President. Welcome, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the county commissioners, county manager. I want to thank you for your support and in essence of time, keeping this very brief. I do want to present to you this evening a statement of intent that has been approved by our Board of Trustees at Southwestern Community College in, I guess, assurance of, or not assurance, but in sense of the potential use of the National Guard Armory as a feasible site for the relocation of our fire safety training program. As you know, we had some property on the side of the road there, and we kind of pushed the pause button because this is an option that has come up as a possibility, and we want to come with a win-win and an opportunity that works for both programs, but the county and for Southwestern Community College. So with essence of time, I just, on behalf of our Board of Trustees, just very quickly read the statement. We, the Board of Trustees, Southwestern Community College, have retained the services of Stewart Cooper Newell Architects, PA, and based on their findings and pending other pertinent information, the Board of Trustees feels the site currently identified as the location of the National Guard Armory at 192 Industrial Park Road, Franklin, North Carolina, would be a suitable location for the placement of the new SCC burn building, fire training facility, and other SCC programs. SCC is eager to get this project underway as we believe this is the next chapter of the Jerry Sutton Public Safety Training Center. In addition, they've granted the deed to the aforementioned property and buildings by Macon County. Southwestern Community College will deed back to Macon County land that was previously identified for the construction of the fire rescue training facility located at Siler Farm Road in Macon County. When we did the original agreement for the approximate 6 acres on Siler Road, we did do a memorandum of understanding that if that property would not be used in the future by SCC for building out facilities or educational use, that we would return that property. And so if this property, being the National Guard Armory, should come and be a suitable site, which we did our due diligence with Stewart Cooper and Newell to come out and survey the site, and they believe that it is suitable and workable. So we would deed the other property back over that's on the side of the road.
That property exactly is not really being conveyed to SEC, but there's an understanding that it could be utilized under appropriate circumstances. What I was gonna recommend is compared to the.
I'm sorry?
What about the cost, the overall cost comparison?
We did not do a cost analysis on the National Guard Armory site. What we did is due diligence was to make sure that the site would withstand the location of the burn building. And that's what we did with Stewart Cooper Newell. So the cost is yet a factor based on whether or not, that would be the next step in phase once the county commissioner said, okay, it's yours.
And I think too, Commissioner Bill, there are numerous factors at this point.
Right.
One being, we have not been conveyed this property from the National Guard yet. A second thing, the county had during the space needs analysis, we actually had the engineering firm that was looking at our county buildings go through and evaluate that building as well. So I think with this, now this gives us an excellent tool, that Southwestern has expressed interest, so this can definitely, with this, become part of that discussion when it comes to this building after we receive the deed and after we evaluate it alongside what we received back from Mosley Architects, looking at it from the county perspective as well. So this will definitely be a tool in that decision-making process when that day comes.
Don, do you have in mind any specific SEC programs in addition to the burn building?
Not new ones. It would provide for the opportunity for expansion. Nothing has been brought to the table as far as like brand new programs. What it would elicit is Curtis to have the opportunity to expand his programs, because as you recall, one of the buildings we had done on our long-range planning was to provide additional space that they could do for their
And that's
basic
what I
law
was getting ready
enforcement.
to ask is, will the building that is there, is it to be raised or can it be utilized?
It should, I'm not sure if I understand completely.
The existing building on the.
Can be utilized, and that's what Curtis has been through there. I would say if there's any modifications, it would be very minor modifications at this point in time. But I think in their minds, they've come in and we could do this, we could do that, and the space provided.
Might be appropriate for the county and the SEC board to revisit its memorandum of understanding. It may be time to update it here, but
Sure.
So you're still gonna build a new building, Dr. Thomas? All this, side, everything works out, and you're gonna retain the old National Guard Armory for further use for SCC?
For further use of the programs for Curtis and his team, and the building that we would be building would actually be a new burn building. The-
Hopefully, you won't say yes, because we'll call him on the road, but I say, the hope is that, based on the architects, preliminary designs, is that we will be able to make a positive impact on the cost of that, because of the cost of grading on the sewer and whatever that. In addition, there is a existing metal building around back that we're looking at possibility to have respect the fire station portion. That it needs some love, but that's a possibility too. So it's kind of, it's hard to give a direct answer to your question, but, depending on the placement of the building, it seems to me that there could be some cost savings. The only thing that we can't ascertain at this point is, when this happens, if it happens, when it happens, and the transfer gets done to Southwestern, and they start the review process, how many months or years today, and better than the board what's the cost is doing the product, to where, how much more is that dollars worth of work today going to cost us to the time we get shown?
What's really appealing is everything in one area.
Bingo.
That's what's really appealing about it.
Absolutely, I think that, we would all be in agreement with that statement, absolutely, because it just gives them that expansion. Anything else? Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
All right.
We're not finished.
Update on the convenience center's renovation project and recycling station, Chris Saul, solid waste director. Welcome, Chris.
Sir.
We're gonna try and make it through reports and presentations, and we'll take a quick breather. I know there's a lot of people here waiting. And I appreciate y'all's patience.
About 2 minutes.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll give you, as I'm trying to bring this presentation up, I will go ahead and give you an update on our center improvements. Which one of those ladies is back? Yeah, I don't either. I want to do it without that feedback.
Maybe we could turn that around.
Whatever you desire. is all.
She's working on it remotely.
Oh, I wondered why it kept jumping around. All right, so, as you may remember, we have earmarked Nantahala and Carson as our first two centers for upgrade. We have completed, or we have all the equipment on site for those renovations. Both are on temporary hold, awaiting others. Derek, I believe, had a conversation a week or so ago with Duke Energy, and I have sent them a formal proposal for the changes we want to make at Junaluska, and we are just waiting their okay, and we will proceed over there and get that going. Likewise, Carson, in the search for a temporary site on the west side, during renovation, we have stumbled upon the potential relocation of the site to a new property, which would better serve the area, would be a much larger footprint, set back further from the road, and would make ingress and egress a lot better at the site. So we are early in negotiations to see about acquiring the property for a permanent relocation of Parson. So wherever we set it, the equipment will be the same, just the layout. Of course, the more we can spread it out, the more people we can house and queue inside the center. And it would really be nice to get away from having stock traffic on North 64. So in light of both of those being on hold and awaiting somebody else to know when our next move is going to be, probably within the next 2 weeks, I will be placing an order for equipment for one of the centers we're going to do this year. That would be Scaly Mountain, and it will get identical equipment as Junaluska, as all of our smaller centers, more remote centers will be patterned after that. So should that equipment arrive, and we're still waiting for approvals on the other sites, we will proceed with Scaly and then fall back to these once we get the okay. Any questions on that?
Equipment hard to move?
No, it's, I mean, it's all on, it all fits on roll-off trucks.
Do you have site improvements, you have these new locations, or is there any reason all these other two were on hold, you couldn't go ahead and start the two new ones? For the equipment you already have on hand?
Oh, could I just go ahead and start the one? Well, potentially, the equipment's the same, I don't have to wait. I guess I didn't want to get halfway into that one and then get the okay. I'd really like to jump on Junaluska if we hear something, because I've been asking for like 15 years.
What is the question?
We want to add an exit gate and make the center one direction, and that gate would exit onto the old River Road. Nobody seems to have a problem with it. It's just somebody's got to say yes.
And the Forest Service, we have to do an encroachment permit, it's a Forest Service road. And that is what Lisa Lynn and Chris has actually submitted a site plan that shows exactly what we want to do to Duke Energy. And they're taking that site plan, as I understand, and we're gonna get that okay from them. And then,
How long has that been submitted?
we submitted it last week.
Yeah, I mean, we've had phone conversations. I had submitted her an overall site plan, and had kind of reached out a couple times, and then by happenstance, she met with Derek, or I guess it was happenstance. We talked about something, and he got me on the phone, and this was the first time I was asked to submit a formal proposal. I can copy y'all if you want on that.
Like the opportunity to speak to you and county manager about that encroachment arrangement before anything's done.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, a few years ago when I tried this, between DOT, Duke, and the Forest Service, nobody claimed the road, so nobody could give me access to it. I guess they decided who it belongs to.
If it's in the Forest Service, you need to just need to make sure you know what's in the encroachment arrangement.
Well, and some years ago, when I was talking to the Forest Service about this, we flagged the area. It's the removal of 2 or 3 trees, the addition of culvert. And then I never heard back from the
It
Forest
won't be a
Service.
perpetual easement, is what I'm trying to communicate to you, in all likelihood.
But you have equipment to do 2 sites.
Yes.
So wait a couple of weeks and build a road.
Well, I mean, after not being able to find anybody that could give me approval, I wondered if there was anybody who could deny me approval, but didn't pull the trigger.
Let's give it a reasonable time and move on.
Do
You know, we put the fence back up.
that. Cutting down trees is
That's
a little different. I can put trees back, but I can't put 30 trees. All right, so to the, any, good on that? To the presentation.
I would
yes.
encourage you, you run your department, do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
I can't add anything to that, but I would certainly encourage you to consider going ahead and pouring that football. I've been working 15 years on that over there. And we've been over there and met with folks in that hale, and we made it clear to the young that you're working on it, and I think they're very understanding of that. And I think if we can go ahead and deploy you in a different community, because you got the equipment here, you can fall back on that. I believe that would be very.
I will endeavor to make contact with the property owner in Scaly. I will be out the rest of the week. I'm moving my daughter to college tomorrow morning, but when I get back next week, my first phone call will be to the property owner in Scaly, and I will take the drawings of what we have proposed at Junaluska. And he's always been very easy.
We don't want to delay Junaluska.
No, I don't want to delay. I mean, one of the things I'm very nervous about is, which may come up in this later presentation, I don't want this to lose momentum. This is something we've tried to do for a very long time, and now that we've got some motion, it kills me that motion is stalled. I don't want it to just, so I want to keep it going.
Yeah.
Anything else on that? Okay. So the actual presentation tonight, I was asked to speak some about our recycling program, and I wanted to take the opportunity to speak more at large about kind of the state of recycling, well, I guess globally, in fact. And although at times it may not appear, this is a pro-recycling presentation. Please keep that in mind.
Let's make this as fast as possible, Chris.
All right. Is a standard next slide. So, Macon County, for almost 20 years now, we have ranked in the top 10 in the state in per capita recycling. This is the 2018 numbers. The 2019 numbers are out, but they weren't published, or they've not been published to the website. But overall, we rank number 4 again this year. On the left side, we rank 11th. This year we fell to 14th in the common household recyclables. This is kind of one of my irksomeness things with recycling. The fact that we move up 10 spots through additional effort in recycling other commodities that most people ignore, it seems a shame that that gets diminished by being placed after the traditional commodities as if they were some more import. But the number I'm going to use is we rank 4th in the state. And we also do that without playing with the numbers that some of those other counties are wont to do. I'll skip how they do that. Couple things just to set up the rest of the presentation. I don't know where this comes from, but every few years, word gets back to me and I start getting asked about, do we put recyclables in landfill? I received a call from the Highlands newspaper this week. No. The Recycling Processing Center, the RPC, is located at the landfill facility, as is the recovery facility and a number of other facilities. So they may see the trucks going in the same gate, but we would not go to the effort and the expense of separating all this stuff and bringing it in, just to turn around and put it in the landfill. So no, our recycling does not just go into the landfill. Number two, that we make money on recycling. Making money on recycling is, if you look at, yes, there is revenue that comes back to us from the sale of recyclables. But no, that revenue has never come close to covering the cost of running the recycling program. All 40 to 50% of our budget goes towards the convenience centers and supporting recycling, to the tune of $1.2, $1.5 million. Our best year ever was $365,000 in sales. So yes, there is revenue coming back, but it's not a money maker. It is heavily subsidized through availability fee and tipping fee. I've talked to you guys before about single stream versus source separated. So I think we get that one. A couple of the big hurdles.
Just to clarify,
Yes.
Jackson County has single stream.
Correct. They do. A couple of things, particularly with the single stream that are growing issues, are contamination and residual. Contamination doesn't mean somebody threw away, recycled a water bottle that had toxic waste or fossil fuels or something in it. It means if this is the number one plastic, a number two plastic is contamination. Trash is contamination. Anything that's not a number one is contamination. And that goes for all your commodities. Residual is, after you process these commodities, how much does wind up going to a landfill? And because people don't get it right all the time. And the automated/manual processing facilities that take in commingled single stream have about a 20 to 30% residual rate. So if we were to go single stream, our increase in recycling would have to go up more than 30% for us to see a net positive effect. Environmental conservation via recycling, we're gonna talk about over the next couple of slides. And then downcycling. Downcycling is recycling of commodities that cannot be turned back into what they are. Plastic soda bottles, you cannot make a plastic soda bottle from a plastic soda bottle. You can make an aluminum can from an aluminum can, but certain things can only be downcycled. Plastic soda bottles can be made into fleece, clothing, carpet, other materials, but it's not an infinite loop. You get one or two chances to recycle that. So the bad news right now is commodities are in the tank. Of historic proportions. Mostly because of the national sword. China is closing its borders, has closed its borders to imports of recyclables from the United States. Largely due to the fact that our residual from all this single stream recycling is filling up their landfills. And so they don't want to take our recycling because of the amount of waste that is associated with that material. The second one is the price of oil. When everything is driven by oil. If oil prices are down, everything else is going to be down. Just a few of the things that we recycle. Mixed paper, historically done well, $50, $60, $70, $80 a ton. It's currently at -$5 a ton. You have to pay somebody $5 a ton to paint. Cardboard, you can see it's down over $100 a ton. Plastics, down a couple $100 plus a ton. Glass is pretty much always terrible, so it's not changed that much, but $10 a ton minus $7 or $8 freight for clear, $5 a ton minus $7 or $8 a ton for freight for color. So most people, kind of getting back on my conservation and environmental, most people remember this if you've been around for a while. The Crying Indian anti-litter campaign, Keep America Beautiful in the 1970s. One of the interesting things are the people that funded this ad campaign. Do you guys know who funded this Keep America Beautiful anti-littering campaign? You might recognize some of these environmental groups: PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch. It turns out that this ad campaign was an extremely genius way of going from manufacturer responsibility for returnable bottles and being responsible for the containers to unleashing billions of one-way containers on the United States. They successfully made us feel bad for it and completely averted their own responsibilities for what they were doing, introducing billions and billions annually of these disposable / recyclable containers. Recycling is by far the least efficient of the 3 R's. You see here a single plastic bottle and the journey it makes to processing, minus the contamination that's going to make another journey to a landfill, versus resin manufacturers just making PET and sending it to a factory. Some years ago, there was a presentation where a gentleman had a water bottle with about that much diesel fuel in it. That's how much diesel fuel was consumed to recycle that one bottle. So, again, we're not supposed to talk about the conservation side in a negative light, but on balance, man, I'm not sure. It seems like that seems like a lot. Now, I will say fiber and metal, I think we should do everything in our power to recycle. Trees and mining are both, losing trees and mining are both very detrimental to the environment. We're not running out of sand for glass, and this stuff is man-made, so I guess you just make more if you start running out. But anyway, reuse works well. Growing up, we had probably 10 different country crock containers, and one might have butter in it, one's gonna have beans, and coleslaw. It's cheaper than Tupperware, so being able to reuse containers is actually having a positive impact. Reducing is probably reducing is where we fail, largely because of both an unwillingness to require manufacturers to take any life responsibility, and we just love shiny, pretty things. We don't go and buy something sitting on a shelf. It's got to have a flashy cardboard backing or paperboard backing and a plastic front so we can see it and ooh and ah over it. Now we're ordering online, so we got more plastic packaging and a cardboard box around that. About 1/3 of the total waste stream in the United States is simply product packaging. Nothing to do with any of the commodities or goods that we're purchasing. And although I spoke longer about the second one, that manufacturer responsibility is really the key. And also the key to why that one probably won't do better. Some other banned items that are mandated recycling. You guys were talking, Ronnie, you were talking earlier about cutting funding. It's hard for us to get these cuts on anybody's radar. But scrap tires, we're currently losing $15,000 to $20,000 a year. We cannot charge for scrap tires. We must recycle scrap tires. And for various and sundry reasons, we lose money at it. And we're going to start losing a lot more money. That number will probably triple in the next few years. Likewise with white goods, basically the state did away with the solid waste management trust fund. So the money for tires it comes out of two pots. One, what Department of Revenue says we should have, how many tires we should have, not counting gravel roads and mountainous terrain and all the things we deal with. Second one is a cost overrun grant, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because if our numbers have been the same for 30 years, I don't know how it can still be considered a cost overrun that we're staying this much above. There are actually counties that get more money than they spend because that formula says they should have that many tires. Loss of the Solid Waste Management Trust Fund also meant the loss of white goods funding. The grant money is gone and the reimbursement money is vastly dwindling. E-waste did cost $30,000-$40,000, and we're doing twice as good as most people, because we're going straight to the source that everybody else is going to, but they've got an in between, so they're paying 30-40 cents a pound where we're paying 15. Some changes we made. We got a truck, we got a trailer. We started hauling some of our own stuff to markets, which cut our transportation on things like carpet, shingles, and e-waste by 75%. We have finally found a source to get rid of good used pallets, rather than just grinding them and using them as a mulch. Glass, you don't want me to take time to go into glass, but if I were king of the world, we would recycle glass at home. We would use it for road base, we would use it for septic tank drain fields, we would make it available for free for contractors to come and get, but we would not transport this stuff somewhere because there's nobody that wants or needs it. Talk about the centers. You know, when you're down there lobbying for everything else, if you happen to think of it, getting that solid waste management trust fund back would be nice. Because the state did not do away with the part where they take in all that revenue from tire shops and retailers, only the part where they send it back out. They're still getting, matter of fact, they're complaining because it's too much money. They're looking to drop the fees because it's too much money. So, that's awesome. Public, some things you can do, some things you can't. Keep up the good work. Our citizens get all the credit for our program because it is a voluntary program. Doing the source separation keeps us, we generally get those prices I showed you, we generally do better than that because people know our product's gonna be clean. We average about $10 above yellow sheet. That's what some of those numbers were that I showed you earlier. For instance, we're not at minus $5 yet on mixed paper. We're living well at zero because we put out a good product. It's hard to avoid plastics, but if you can buy larger, fewer big plastics, that beats the multi-use single-serve size. One, it's easier to remember recycling because you get this big hunting jug and leave the floor, but yeah, you can read the rest of it. Point being, for now, we're hoping to keep going. The next fee increase, I humbly come before you gentlemen to request, will be to subsidize recycling. It will not be for shiny new equipment or general county waste. It will be to substitute the need to subsidize our recycling programs, whether mandated or just to keep going what we've got going. The e-waste, tire loss, and white goods, the value of those things that I showed you is just that alone is probably $5 in an availability fee to equal those losses. I'm out.
What about if you, the plastics, the glass, if it went in the landfill, how much of that short of a life would you sell?
Well, it would, we average about 20% recycling, so you would lose a year every 4 years. But at the same time, and I'm not advocating putting this stuff in the landfill.
Oh, no, but
I think it's better than littering, but we can landfill for 18, 20 cents on the dollar what we can recycle. So recycling is not a financial decision. It's a, we want to feel good about ourselves. And again, this is a pro-recycling talk. I'm all about it. We recycle at home. I love it. Can't get enough of it. But I think if we're gonna sustain recycling programs, people need to understand what that means. Statutorily, Chester will back me up on this, I'm certain. We can't even charge for recycling. Towns can, counties are not authorized to charge a fee for recycling services. Orange County tried again a few years ago, got shut down.
Chris, I got a simple.
Okay.
What time do you close the landfill at the major, at the main landfill?
What time? The landfill closes at 4:30.
What time can you get in?
All self-unloading vehicles must be in by 4, and all load vehicles must be in by 4:15.
So why don't you change your sign? You're not open.
There is a sign that says all,
But you are
says what I
closed
just told
at
you.
4:30, you're closed at 4 o'clock.
If you make it in, you have till 4:30 to get back out.
But you are closed at 4, you're not open till 4:30.
I have employees on duty working
But
until
you can't
4:30.
take that in. Right?
If they get there in time.
Yeah, if a bullfrog had wings.
Well, the ordinance says that you must be in 30 minutes before close. That's what the
Why
ordinance.
don't you just change your sign?
I don't know. I will if you want me to.
I would suggest that. It affects a lot of folks.
All right, Chris, thank you for your time. I got another task for you. Sorry, we're bombarding you tonight.
Oh.
I spoke to the Scaly Mountain Community Association a little while, about 6 weeks ago, I guess. They pretty much got railroaded about a lot of things about the convenience center, so I'm very pleased to hear, because I didn't know at that time it was on the horizon for renovations. But I got beat up on everything from signage to closing to people not being there to how come we only have hand-painted signs and can't afford real signs to this, that, and the other. Before I left, and here's my task for you, before I left, they gave me they voted and presented a check, Macon County Solid Waste for $1,000 for improvements to that center.
Okay.
I hated to even accept it because I didn't think it was right, and I think we should be handling that, but if you don't mind, I think it would be great if you could, if I could task you with right now, thank you letter, and whether we keep this check and put it to good use towards that center on the road it's going towards. And if we decide to return it to them, I don't think that's a bad option either, but however you think's best. I don't know what your budget is for that center. Here's a check from Scaly Mountain Community Association, for Macon County for $1,000.
Hey, that is awesome. Not unprecedented. You are aware of the landscaping improvements when you did Mud Creek.
Right.
So,
Oh, absolutely.
From a similar source.
Okay.
So, we love it, and I love the fact that the community cares about the center. That actually means something.
If you don't mind, I'll sign that with you.
You got it. I'll write it and I'll leave you a spot.
Chris, one
Yes, sir.
additional question. We had a community meeting in Holly Springs community. And one of the residents of Holly Springs community brought up a question about the recycling center there. Seems like everywhere you go, and the comment that was made is they were under the impression, they felt very strongly about this, that there's a piece of property next to Holly Springs Recycling Center that the county is in the process of acquiring. And they want to clear it and use it to store their empty dumpsters there. I went out on a bit of a limb and told them that I really didn't think that if you're going to store empty dumpsters, that you would storm in Holly Springs, when you got the little landfill.
No.
So,
Again, I
I
have no idea the nexus of that. I have no intention of storing, anything anywhere other than where we're storing now.
I've done what I told that young lady to do.
It's not a bad idea though.
No, I mean, you know,
As long as you can get there about 2 o'clock today.
we'd have to go get it. I mean, that's just, and we pay every time J&B hooks a can, so no, I don't want my can somewhere else where that's a double hook, so.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you addressing those minutes too, because I've gotten those emails as well.
All right.
Update on cost savings brought by North Carolina Senior Health Insurance Information Program. Welcome. We get those reports. Go ahead.
Oh, no.
We're so far.
Thank you. I know you've already heard it this evening, but I promise we will be very, very brief. Thanks for the opportunity to come let us brag just a few minutes on our employees and some of our volunteers over at the senior center. Yay! I didn't do it, sorry. Maybe that will help. Our magnetic personality is doing something. There we go. Is that better? I think you can still hear me. I have a pretty big mouth, so it shouldn't be a problem. We're going to brag just a couple moments on, like I said, our volunteers, primarily over at the senior center. A few of those special ones that work with our SHIP program. Is really good on some of the statistics, and then I'm going to let Karen Robbins, who is our SHIP coordinator, explain just a tad more in detail. This is the third year that this type of information has been tracked at the state, and all 3 years, Macon County has been one of the top for dollars saved, which I think is a huge attribute to the volunteers. In 2016, 9 Macon County volunteers counseled 1,555 people for a savings of a little over $1.1 million. In 2017, 8 Macon County volunteers counseled 1,139 people for a savings of $1.2 million. And for 2018, the numbers are just as impressive. And what you guys have in front of you is a comparison of 2018 numbers. And if you notice, we highlighted a few counties, and they happen to be our neighboring counties, and we absolutely blew them away as far as numbers. And I'm going to let Karen expound a little more on that right now.
Thank you. What the Seniors Health Insurance Information Program is, or SHIP, it's a program that utilizes volunteers to educate, advocate, and counsel individuals on their Medicare. Medicare has 8 Macon County has 8 volunteers that have completed training to assist beneficiaries in the decisions that help with the saving money part. The volunteers have a responsibility to report on a federal data site that the counseling sessions that they do with beneficiaries, and that is part of the grant requirements that we have on the county level that helps determine federal money for the program in each state. On this site, we report the comparison cost between any current plan and with any future plan that is enrolled in, and the difference is what is counted as a savings. In the calendar year of 2018, out of the 100 counties, Macon County was 13th in the state for savings. It was reported that our volunteers counseled 994 beneficiaries and saved those 994 people approximately $1.4 million. So we did really good.
Certainly did.
Yes. And just real quick, I'd just like to make a statement on who the volunteers are or were for 2018. Elaine Bradley, Emma Conley, Dorothy Crawford, Carolyn Crunkleton, Deborah Hamill, Evelyn Joins, Pearl Stalcup, and Barbara Price. It's important those names get out there.
Great job.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Thank you for everything.
I told you to be short and sweet.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'm going to tag on to this just real quick with a little bit of information. Mr. Manager asked me to just pull some information related to what we've done over at the Senior Services Center with respect to not only SHIP, some of the other programs that we run there, and I just wanted to highlight these really quick if I could. I'm going back from 2012 to 2017. In 2012, the SHIP recipients that we served were somewhere around 1,000. We've increased that up to now 1,300 SHIP recipients for 2017. That's a 22%, 23% increase. If I can touch on the congregate meals and home delivered meals that we also do over senior services. We have, in 2012, we served somewhere in the neighborhood of about 27,000 folks through both of those meal programs. Fiscal year 2017, we were serving some in the neighborhood of about 33,000 individuals. So that's almost a 22% increase as well. So when you start looking at the amount of services that those programs are offering relative to increases versus the county dollars that are spent over there, you can see there's a really lot of gain.
Actually, please don't sit down again for the way. Until you mention the adult daycare center.
Sure, so we have an adult daycare center. I'll let Jennifer talk a little bit more about that, but that is an incredible part of the program of services.
We're one of the very few counties that still have it.
Our adult daycare, if you don't know what it is a place in our building where folks who have some dementia or some other disabilities are able to come for the day while their caregiver is able to, some of them go back to work, some of those caregivers actually use that time to go to the grocery store. Some of them just use it as time to go rest. It is a hard job being a caregiver. And our program right now has a couple wonderful young ladies that are in there, and they are both fairly new in our center, but they have jumped in head first and are actually, striving to make that an amazing center. We do have, unfortunately, a waiting list. We are trying to hire some new staff in there and be able to increase our load. Right now, the state guidelines tell us how many we can have, and we can only have 8 participants to every 1 staff, so we're at a max on 16 on any given day. But if we can get ourselves fully staffed, we'll be able to go up to 24 on any given day. So, and it is on a waiting list, so it is a very well-used program in the community.
Wonderful. Yes, yeah.
The 2020 Census and Importance of Complete Count Committee. Debbie Reese, U.S. Census Bureau Partnership Specialist. Okay.
Hi, I'm Debbie Reese. I'm your partnership specialist for the 2020 census. As partnership specialist for the 2020 census, I am part of the nation's largest peacetime mobilization of its workforce. And we are all there for one mission, and that is to count everyone, there's my manager, to count everyone once and only once and in the right place. And we have one goal, and that is a complete and accurate count. As a partnership specialist, what I'm supposed to do is to educate, encourage, and engage. And that's what I'd like to do briefly with you tonight during this talk, so that we might do that in this community. Now, I don't know how much you know about how the decennial census, a 2020 census, is a pillar of American democracy. I didn't know. Did you know that it's inexorably intertwined with American democracy? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, to secure justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, to promote the common welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And in that Constitution, in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, those founders mandated a decennial census. Why? It is for justice. It is for fairness in representation and division of resources. Now, when the founders established that mandate, they had the debt of the American Revolution, and they wanted to fairly disperse that among the states. When our founders established this Constitution for this United States, for this freedom, for this justice, they wanted to have just representation. And in order to do that, they needed a population head count so that they could apportion House of Representative seats for every state, and also electoral college votes. Now, the first census, first decennial census in 1790, in President George Washington's first term of office, slightly after his first year. And the U.S. Marshals and their assistants took 18 months knocking door to door to door to collect that information and put it on President Washington's desk. Sounds like a lot of fun, right? Well, we still go door to door, but now, for the 2020 census, for the first time ever, we are going to have internet submission of our data. And so people can submit by computer using their mobile devices, they can submit by phone, and they can also still submit by the paper form. Now, today our data is going to be on the desk of the President by December 31st. Census Day is April 1st, and that's the day, you'll remember that because that's April Fool's Day, but that's the day that you determine your residency. What is your home? It's a key date for determining residency for lots of populations. Now today, what is the census data used for? Well, as in 1790, it is for justice and fairness and representation. Still, the state's apportionment of seats in the House of Representatives. Still, electoral college votes. But today, every year, and you know this as county commissioners, as the town manager, today over $675 billion are apportioned according to that census count. Now, how does that work? Well, Congress determines the size of the pie for a federal program. So you can have your 3-inch tart pies, you can have your 9-inch Sara Lee, Marie Callender, or grocery store pies, or like in my house where my son's got to have an apple pie for his birthday, we use the largest cast iron skillet I've got. Well, that is the size of the pie determined by Congress. But for each state, for each pie, the size of the slice is determined by that population head count. Now, when somebody is missed, what happens is the slice gets smaller for that state. For the state, down to the county, down to the individual programs in the county, the slice gets smaller and smaller. And the money doesn't go back to the federal government. No, 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 no. It goes to the other states that had a better count. So it behooves us to count everyone once and only once and in the right place. Not only that, but I have for you one for you to share. Commissioners each get their own. And one for you to share. Okay, so on the right-hand side, you've got something that looks sort of like this. This is a document that was prepared by the Census Bureau. And what they did is they had a team of researchers, and they went through all the federal programs, and I have included the criteria for inclusion over here. And they identified the federal programs that use census data to determine how funding was distributed. And so what I'd like you to do is take about a minute and go through this, and I'd like you to look at it and think of your county. Think of what's important to you. Identify the program that's listed here, or a number of programs that are important to you because they're important to this county, and reflect on why that is. Okay? Your minute starts.
While I'm looking at their minute, I believe I'm the only one that was here 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The county manager was in charge of our census. We appealed our census count. We lost the appeal. We appealed the appeal. Lost it. We appealed the appeal, the appeal. And lost it. So the census count is so important, and we've been in this county now for 20 years, so maybe you get it right.
Well, you mean the U.S. Census Bureau?
So they disputed what we counted.
Well, Unfortunately, I can't speak to that, but I can say that you run a better chance of having a complete and accurate count if you have people responding. And if you want to talk to me about those details, I'd be happy to.
Well, in
listen.
2000, it was said that Macon County's response rate to the 2000 census was 54%, if I'm not
Right,
mistaken.
well.
Now, in
right.
2010, when we did the census
Yeah.
again, we had established a complete count committee. I think we
I
raised
have
that to over
you guys
70.
have got that handout, it's the one with the gray bar at the top.
I think we raised that to over 70% response rate, but it was still about 6,000 to 10,000 people too low.
About 10,000.
We showed it proof, we thought, in the previous county manager, we thought we could. But we're gonna.
You may as well not appeal whatever
So,
the county is.
so what you're saying is that you had numbers, and then the census map was taken, and it didn't agree with your numbers. Is that what you're saying?
We have very good, a great GIS department, and a great tax department. And in looking at that info, comparing back to,
Okay.
we took the tax bills that leave the county versus the ones that stay, and the number that we got from our tax information data and our GIS data was higher than the number that the census.
So, I like to speak about things that I know, which is why I pulled this. And I'm certainly not trained to respond
Right,
to
that's
that,
not
but
your-
what
that's
I
not your-
think, a way to think of that is, if you know what your population count is, you've got documentation for that, and your census count didn't agree with your documentation, that says to me that you had an undercount. And why do you have an undercount? You have an undercount when people don't respond. So, I mean, I don't think I even need to do the rest of the presentation, but I will. That seems to me that what is really important is that complete count committee and all of the activities that we're gonna do in this county, get people to respond. Self-respond or respond when somebody knocks on their door, because apparently they weren't counted.
Right.
I mean, you know what you got, and if you appealed twice, and if you didn't get your appeal, then it behooves us, I am your partnership specialist, so it behooves us to make sure that that count gets everybody. And, I won't do this activity since we did that. I was gonna have you tell the program that's your favorite, and so that keep you from falling asleep. But, you know, when you have young people 0 to 5, and people don't count them because they're living at grandma's house, but they're at Aunt Sally's every such and such, and people don't think they're important. Well, that's very important for funding. It's very important for the funding for the youth programs, and it's very important because they are part of your count. When you have seniors who don't respond, that is very important for your count. And when you have your, like, I have a handout in there that I think one of you was looking at, the one with the pretty colors. That's a picture from our Roam software, and what it does is it looks at all the tracks, and you know what a track is. All the tracks in the county, and it pulls the information of them. And you've got 2 tracks that are side, like say this is your county. You've got a track right here, and then you've got a track that's right by Franklin. Franklin is your lowest response track. Most people who aren't responding are right here in Franklin. And then down here, where you told me people are living on the plateau.
Right, Highlands, yeah.
That's where you've got only 13% of non-response up in the Highlands.
That was
But
the
you
best
got-
response, right?
That's the best response, right? But you know what? That's still 13% of people not responding. You've got 50% of your children in Franklin are identified from the community survey data of living in poverty. That is a very hard to count population. So when I get back to my talk, well, look, this is what the census has done. The Census Bureau, they said the big increase that happened from 2000 to 2010, that had to do with complete count committees. That was the intervention they did that seemed to make a huge difference. And so tonight, you are going to have the opportunity to approve a resolution to partner with the Census Bureau and to work what has already been established in 2010 to continue that work and to have that complete count committee grow. And this is the way they work. There is, it's a top-down, bottom-up approach that the Census Bureau has established across the nation, whether it's on the national level, the state level, the county level, the neighborhood level, my club. The idea is to identify leaders who are trusted voices. And then to have those trusted voices gathered together in the most formal sense in the complete count committee. In the less formal sense, they gather together in your neighborhood, in their club, in your senior center, in your bowling alley, the youth football, whatever, wherever people have the same goals and interests. And those trusted voices come together, and this is what your complete count committee is going to do. They say, what are the barriers to a complete count? What kind of data can we pull? What kind of information can we pull to inform why we have those barriers and to inform how we might remove them? And then to create strategies to do that. So you will form subcommittees. For your complete count committee, I gave you this thing on the complete count committee. This one. Your complete count committee will come together and there are suggestions for subcommittees. I suggest that you look at those suggestions and you say, you know, yeah, those are fine, but in our community, this is what's really important. We don't need that subcommittee, we need this subcommittee. So anyway, identify what's important and then work as a complete count committee. This handout right here, this talks about the complete count committee's timeline. So if you look at the date, what phase are we in right now in your handout? That looks like this. This one. What phase are we in? By date.
I'm so tired I can't see it. Can't see it.
Is it too small?
We're in
I'm too tired to see
education,
it.
we're in
We'll catch you
awareness.
next time.
We are in the awareness phase.
Yes.
That's January 2019 to February 2020. So by this time, you've already had their suggested timeline. You've already had a complete count committee. It's already started. It's already held. I heard it. I couldn't find it because I didn't have time today because I heard it yesterday. But something like 75% of the complete count committees have already done this phase. So we're coming in here, and we've got all this to do.
And see, but we still got behind that ball. We didn't even get assigned a regional partnership specialist recently.
I am it.
I know.
And I just came on board on June 9th.
So it's a lot, you know, a lot of things like.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we adopt the
2020 Census Partnership.
2020 Census
Did I do a good job?
Resolution.
I have one more thing to
Make it a
say to you
second.
guys. So, the census
We get
is,
sent. I made a motion, we adopt the resolution.
You get a second?
And
Get a second, all in favor?
Aye.
one more thing. So, along with everything that you do elsewhere, the schools are really important. And, you know, I don't know, we heard about the recycling and everything and mindsets and being controlled by Pepsi-Cola. I remember when I was a little kid and I learned, please don't be a litter bug because every little bit hurts. Thank you. Because every little bit hurts. And I took that home to my parents and I said, don't throw that cigarette on the ground and stomp it out with your foot. You need to pick that up. Well, if we can take the census message that I shared with you today into the schools, and those children bring it home, and they know it's important. Hey, if they say, you know, my school lunch depends on you filling out your census, fill it out. And so we've got statistics in the schools programs that I hope your school board and your superintendent adopt. And we have this little hat that I made while I was jogging and a little song. And wouldn't it be cool if when you had events, somebody like what's going to happen in Cherokee County next Monday at our commissioners meeting, I'm going to give that talk. I'm going to say, and what can you do as an individual? You can be a trust. First of all, fill out your census data. Fill it out by April 1st. And then act as a trusted voice in your family, with your friends, with your networks. You know what? If you have time, join a complete count committee And if there isn't one, form one.
All right, we appreciate you.
Wait,
Thank
wait,
you so
wait.
much.
Our goal is to count everyone once and only once in the right place, and then the cheerleaders are gonna march in, and they're gonna sing the song. Wouldn't that be great? If that could happen across the nation?
Debbie was here, she was here at 4 o'clock today, and she was just as excited.
She took a break.
As she is right now. I would like to say, Debbie, I'm
Yeah,
so,
say what you-
we got the best, we have the best census partnership specialists. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Thank you for being here at 4 o'clock, and thank you for giving such a great
Go. We'll keep trying. We gotta say, we're not even out of report yet. I apologize, everyone. I've been doing this for a long time now. This is the longest I've ever seen us go in reports and presentations. We're normally finished by 7.
I know.
Information concerning drug court initiative in Clay, Cherokee, Graham counties. Mr. Gill.
Mr. Gill must not be with us tonight.
All right.
Strike that.
All right, presentation regarding Highlands Performing Arts Center. Cindy Ray, Cindy, I appreciate your patience.
Sure. I'm not too sure what to say after all of that.
You have a new appreciation.
I'll be fast, yeah.
For our padded seats back here.
Here's a little handout for the unfortunately, I don't have more than minutes. My name is Cindy Trevathan. I live in Highlands, where 87% of us returned the Census Bureau information, and I have to say, I believe we did. And I'm here to solicit your support for the Highlands Performing Arts Center. And I know we've talked about recycling and all kinds of critical issues, but I'll have to tell you, and I'm sure maybe you're aware, that the arts, the performing arts, are a wonderful generator of business in a community. Arts in North Carolina estimates that about $2 billion a year is spent on performing arts. In North Carolina, I don't know what the numbers are in Macon County, but of that, 44% goes to the organization, but $1.2 billion goes to all the surrounding businesses, the restaurants, the hotels, and everything else that's associated with, the people coming in to enjoy the arts. So let me tell you what we have in Highlands. We call them performing arts buildings, but truth be known, they're a church and an old school auditorium. About 55 years ago, we took the Highlands School and we started using they started using the auditorium for summer stock performances. About 3 years ago, we started bringing movies there, so that's our movie theater too. So it's an old gym from 55 years ago from the Highlands School. About 20 years ago, a church relocated. Community Bible Church got bigger than they could handle in their existing facility. And a group of people that enjoyed chamber music bought the church as the second performing arts center. Both of these facilities are old. One, the school is really old, has structural issues, the issues with our demographic getting up into them, parking problems, restrooms that are very old, and certainly aren't designed for performing arts. So 4 years ago, our mayor had a vision, and he said, what if we had all the performing arts under one roof? And we looked at that, and that's what I want to share with you today. Our mission is to provide a facility that provides world-class entertainment at a low cost for all of the performing arts in Highlands. Now, what do we have in Highlands? We have a lot actually going on. We have the Highlands Community Players, the Highlands Cashers Chamber Music Festival, Bel Canto, Youth Theater, and then we also live stream the New York Metropolitan Opera, the National Theatre of London, and in 2021, we're going to be home to the Highlands Playhouse and their movies too with this project, if all goes as we hope. So we looked at this project, and about 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, Jane Woodruff offered to build a 1,000-seat theater for us in Highlands. And those that may have been involved, the town said thanks, but no thanks. We couldn't handle a 1,000-seat. You guys can in Franklin, but we certainly can't. And what we need is something more like 350-seat theater. What we also need is our existing 200-seat was a church, now it's a chamber hall, and then adding an 85-seat black box. So this whole new configuration is what we designed that we feel makes the most sense for all the performing arts needs on our Highlands Plateau. So we came up with the design, and some of the important issues about the design for us is We want this place, our facility, to enable us to even further remember the traditions and values that we hold dear up here in the Appalachian Mountains. So we bring in bluegrass music, we bring in storytellers, we bring in other things like Broadway and whatnot. But we also hope with this new facility that we can expand that capability to be a center for recognition of the cultural and traditions that we here enjoy in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So we plan to do that. With the new facility, we'll also be able to expand some of our youth theater opportunities. We provide training for our kids at Highland School for youth theater, where they get actual credited classes, and they perform in different youth theater performances, many of which then go on to college to learn more about these activities. So those are things that are really important to us. So our community has been wonderful. Initially it's a $10 million project. Of that, $1.5 million of the 10 is an operating endowment. We want to always keep the tickets low for the community, and we've got this operating endowment to help us keep this, be responsible owners of this. All of the performing arts groups that perform here are nonprofits, so we all are operating, with very tight budgets. But as it turns out, the project scope changed slightly, as they happen to do, especially when you're building up in Highlands, which has a myriad of problems in construction. Plus some additional land around us became made available, so the project scope has gone up a couple million. But let me tell you, we have raised, this is 100% private donations, and that is rare for a performing arts center. Most of the time it's a 50-50 partnership where there's a hotel occupancy tax or something of that nature that pays for half of it, and then donations come in. We have done this 100%. We have had over 100 donors have contributed $10 million. That's where we're at right now with this project. We need, like I said, 2 to 3 more million to go to finish it up. But we have done that with all individual donations. And you wonder, well, wow, a lot of our people, I will confess, this is their second home. And when I see the trust that they have in this project, I see two things. It gets back to the business issue. They have an investment in Highlands, in Macon County. They have an investment in Macon County, their house. And they want to see it continue to grow and prosper. And putting together, updating this Performing Arts Center is just going to add to the other wonderful opportunities that we provide people in Macon County. And you might say, well, maybe people don't drive too far to get up there. I will tell you, there is nothing more interesting to me than watching when our Elvis Presley impersonator Travis Boyd shows up. We have to have him 2 nights because everybody from across Macon and Jackson County comes up to watch this man. They're in love. They all turn like they're 16 again. They're all looking at him like in awe, and it's quite interesting to see that. So it's did you see that? So we bring those kind of things, and it brings people in from all over. And anyway, that's kind of where we're at. And if you have any questions, I kind of made it talk fast to get you out of here, and I apologize.
No, we appreciate that.
I believe we on the same team, the census, y'all.
Since.
I think we make a good team too.
Anyway, but we're hoping we could get some support from y'all. I appreciate your support as a board member of REACH that you gave us when we did our shelter project. Ron, it's good to see you again on that. And this project.
We appreciate your presentation. And, I personally think that the county should support this project because we haven't. Some of the projects we supported around this area through the years, in Kelly School, some of the community projects. I think it makes sense, especially to get back to a project that drives so much economically for a community in our county that's literally thriving right now. So I think it's important. If I'm not mistaken, Laura, I'm gonna have to ask you a question, but I presume with this facility going up, we're gonna be paying property taxes on that? Or is that get written off via?
It's a not, and we're a 501c3. No,
you're a 501c3.
we are not.
Yeah,
We do not pay property.
Exemption.
We get an exemption
Okay.
because we just purchased it from the town, the building back, and we looked into that because we had to take a peek at our budget. So unfortunately, sorry, no revenue from us on that front.
But the properties right around you are gonna be smiling big time.
They seem pretty happy.
Sales tax.
Yeah, sales tax. You know, the new facility, right now we have a 200-seat theater. We're adding the 350-seat theater because frankly, we've outgrown the church that we're currently in. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot more revenue for ticket sales when we have our events.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't agree more that this goes on the line of the County Heritage Center, and of course it's at a different level, but the economic impact that can be benefited, it already has for many, many years, but with the new facility and what's going on, I really don't have a number in mind, Mr. Chairman, but, just thinking on some of the others, do you think we could do a 2-year commitment? Would that be agreeable to anybody?
You're right, Mr. Westmoreland. So did the town of Highlands support?
The town of Highlands has been supporting us. This building was owned, well, a group of people purchased the church, then they sold it to the town of Highlands. And up until last year, they had been maintaining it and doing everything for it. So then when we proceeded with this project, we had to acquire it back, which is what we did. In that contract, they have given us concessions in terms of helping us out along the way here with some efforts, you know, with some of the costs that we have associated with owning the building now. So they, yeah.
Have they given a capital contribution? I know they're paying for the
They
maintenance of
have
that. So-
not yet.
Oh, maybe we can put a fourth.
Put a
in
matching.
and do it.
We have we would not be here but for an anonymous $5 million donor. We have no idea who this person is, we truly don't. But matching seems to motivate a lot. In fact, that's part of my motivation for talking to y'all today, is we've gotten 4 of the $5 million matching, but that last $1 million, I'm still rounding it up because I have to do it in $1 million increments for anonymous to get the final $1 million. So.
Carl, if you go ahead and give that.
If you could just a little more, Carl. Paul?
Another million.
We have to go borrow it.
If I'm borrowing it, what do you gotta do?
Well, what I'd recommend, Mr. Chairman, just to show our interest, and this board does certainly want to support it, is that we commit to $30,000 a year for 2 years. I think that's in line with what other things, I know that's just a drop in the bucket, what you need, but it is taxpayer dollars.
Thank you so much.
And, but I would make that suggestion, just as a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, if that's, I mean, you represent that area, I know, but I've got all those got a lot of input in Highland. A lot of that money comes down the hill, we know that.
Just know what a boon it is for that community. So.
Well, I think form of a motion that we Macon County contribute to this economic impact that Highland will have on the whole community, on the whole county, by $30,000 this fiscal year and $30,000 next fiscal year earmark to help with the construction of the theater.
We have a motion on the floor.
Bless you. Thank you.
I was saying, I just have a question. If this proceeds forward, Eric, or Lori, are there any funds left in economic?
Yeah, there's over $1 million.
Over $1 million.
Oh, the economic development.
Economic development
Yes.
fund.
Yeah, there's money there.
And that's where I'd recommend Mr. Chairman that this money comes. Because it's strictly economic development.
Now, there are statutes that have to
We
be
know that.
applied with in order to.
And we've done the same thing in other cases with that money.
Just like it just have to be structured.
Right, way with statute, we'd like to have an agreement, of course.
We do an interlocal agreement.
All right, any questions? Any
It's also
discussion?
considered recreation, which makes that task considerably easier than economic development.
Do you want us to go ahead and do this year's, go ahead and get that from that fund right now and go ahead and get the agreement drawn up?
That would be part of the vote.
We vote.
You
We
gotta
vote
vote
in
for it.
favor of it. Any further questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank y'all so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.
Is that
I've
worth
got some
it?
free tickets for y'all.
Is that, we can't accept it.
Oh,
We can't
yeah.
accept it.
Forget that, forget that. Strike that from the record.
Just take your
Donate
seats.
to the
So I hope that was
community.
worth the
I
$30.
told you.
Thank y'all. Have a safe trip back up the hill. If you're running into troubles, I'll be coming back up in
Okay.
about 2 hours.
Oh my gosh. Thank y'all for your service.
Right, do y'all wanna take a break or do you wanna keep trucking? The rest of this is gonna be quick, except for it's like one item.
Mr. Sutton's here, Chuck Sutton's here, and I'm with Region 8 Partnership Shield, I kind of know what it's gonna be.
Partnership with Macon Program for Progress to support the Smart Region 8 Partnership with Child Care Health Consultant for Macon County. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you, sir. Macon Program Progress is requesting that the county support our grant for the child care health consultant in the amount of $12,000. We received this grant July 1st, have put in place steps to get it going. This grant was previously administered by Macon County through the health department. That is no longer going to happen. We're asking that the funds that would have been supporting it over there through the health department be funded to Macon Program for Progress.
And to speak to that, I've had conversations with the health director, Mr. Rocco, and the health department. This is a great program. We've partnered with MPP before doing some things, and that the health, while Macon County did not apply and receive this grant this year, the program is still nonetheless just as valuable as it was when it was done at the health department. The health director, in recognizing that, Mr. Rocco has been able to get those $12,000, that $12,000 in funding within his budget, and we would just be asking right now, Chester, how do we distribute that fund if the board would votes to move forward with this, the $12,000. The only clarification thing we would have is how to distribute the money. We just simply write a check. We do have a line item for MPP in the budget right now.
And you have a timeline here, Chuck.
We have the job advertised right now, so when we hire, we'll start spending money.
Let me just say this, before Chester answers, at the board meeting today at MVP, I recognize all the work you did, because without them, we would have lost this grant. Pure and simple. 2 years ago, we would have lost this grant.
It's important to the child care providers, not Macon Program for Progress, but the home child care providers, the church child care providers, that they get the support from this grant.
So without MVP's willingness to step up and do this, it would be gone. You know, once you lose one, it's hard to get it back. So thank you, Chuck.
I move we take action
The general proposition, you'll have a simple agreement between the county and the nonprofit. So the nonprofit can do something that the county could do itself. And so I think that would be the appropriate way to take this money. And the money is already at there.
Yeah, we have the money. The money is already within the budget.
It's not a new appropriation.
It's no new money.
So we have a motion.
Carmen found the money.
Carmen
in
was
his
at,
budget.
yes, and he was very supportive of MPP and them taking on this initiative as well as the initiative itself.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Gillespie, second by Commissioner Shields, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your job.
It's worth that 3 hours.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right. The rest of these will hopefully go pretty quickly. Revised interlocal agreement with SCC.
Yes, gentlemen, when you met last, you'll recall the meeting, I guess it was the May meeting, I guess it was the June meeting, I'm sorry. There was a presentation made on behalf of SEC about doing some paving at the Jerry Sutton Center out at the industrial park for SEC. A figure had been put together, and that was for simply doing I guess a 2-inch paving job on top of the existing pavement. And so the contract was entered at that particular point in time. Since then, I think SEC sort of rethought their situation and decided that for roughly $12,000 to $13,000 more, they could have the existing asphalt taken up, the space packed and then all new asphalt put in, is the way I understand that. The additional cost, is $12,740. They've requested to amend the original agreement. I provided each of you a copy with that. They will, so in effect, we've already paid $46,365 to the total price of $62,900. We would be adding to that per their request of $12,740. I think at the end of the day, I think you've got a better job. I think all concerned with it.
Who was the job?
The Parker Paving Company, Silver, North Carolina.
Motion accept
I was gonna say, y'all already approved it back in July. Y'all actually approved $16,535.
Yeah, you did. This is just a presentation of the
More than what
contract.
they're asking for.
Yeah.
So,
Bill? So no
You
action
need to
needed.
vote on that. You
I
do
guess
need, you do need to vote to approve it.
you just don't need to
We got a
vote.
motion by Commissioner Gillespie to approve the revised interlocal agreement. Second by Commissioner Bill, all in favor?
Aye.
New business discussion of changes to involuntary commitment transportation proceedings.
Yeah, just in a nutshell, I'll try to be extremely brief. Shelley Foreman was kind enough to kind of give us an introduction on this. She was talking about changes to involuntary commitment proceedings, and where it affects your body is the statute used to say we may enter into a transportation agreement. Statute now reads we shall. And not only shall we do it, we will have one in place on the 1st of October of 2019. So what I tried to do is give to you at least a starting point of a proposed involuntary commitment transportation agreement. I've passed out a copy. I'm not recommending that we adopt that tonight. I'm asking you to take it home, look at it, and we're gonna be coming back and asking you to I guess, kind of put some final touches on this. I do want you to understand, this is essentially the way the county, town of Highlands, and the town of Franklin are doing transportation presently. In the course of having this discussion, however, I do want you to understand that the sheriff has raised a question and suggested that we look into the possibility of bringing into this transportation agreement a private transportation provider that is allowed by statute. There is some indication that the county could potentially save some money. I think we're gonna work on some numbers, getting some numbers together.
We've got it, we're looking at it.
And what I would propose is that we allow some time in September to look at those. I can have a Plan A contract and a Plan B contract, I guess, available for you on that day. But I think the sheriff is optimistic that we should save some money, and I think aside from saving the money, I think what he is one of his bigger concerns is he can take people that would be driving, say, to Dare County or to Wilmington, take an involuntary commitment, and keep those officers on the streets here in Macon County as opposed to transporting them. I mean, it's not that the transport's unimportant, it's very important, but having your officers here in Macon County is very important too.
We'll take that under advisement. The sheriff will obviously appreciate your suggestions, recommendations, and thoughts on this, so thank you for that. Item 11C, Scaly Mountain Recreation Agreement.
this is your usual annual agreement with Scaly Mountain to provide recreation opportunities, $5,000, it's in the budget.
We get a motion to approve. Motion by Commissioner Gillespie, second by Commissioner Bill, all in favor?
Aye.
We have Brooke and Kevin Hens occupancy tax penalty waiver. Or can you give us that amount? I read it. I can't
Their letter
remember.
was in your packet, $200.
$200. I think we've been doing that with all of these
Yes, you have.
so far.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Bill, second by Commissioner Gillespie, all in favor? Item E, Colin Gooder occupancy tax, similar situation.
129.02.
Got a motion by Commissioner Gillespie.
Those
Second
are
by
for good
Commissioner
calls
Shields.
shown. And those are for good calls shown, and the minutes should so reflect.
You got that, Mike?
Got it.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Lori, just while we're talking about that, how much, I saw an email come across earlier this week about the Airbnb proceeds. Can you give us those amounts? Or you know them offhand? Or do you mind at our September meeting?
203,000, I think, was the total from
That's
August,
unbelievable.
August 2015 through June of 2019. I do know Highland's amount because
Yeah, I saw that email.
133,000 they asked.
And the rest went to.
And then the rest got divvied up
80.
between Nanahaw and Franklin.
Unbelievable. Good job, team.
Yeah, that was a lot of time in the works right there.
Yeah, thank y'all for your work on that. Wow. It does. All right, consent agenda, I know we added, high budget amendments on 47, 48, and 49. Is there any questions? If not, or if anybody likes something removed, we'll take a motion to approve all.
Sheriff, did you want to speak to that? It's in the consent agenda.
I know you like to see our grants done during the budget process. Well, we can't do that because they didn't award the grants for the Governor's Crime Commission or the Governor's Highway Safety Commission until recently. And so we've been awarded that, and we would just ask for consideration and understand that we're gonna make our best effort we feel like we've got money within our budget, our existing budget of this new budget that you all approved in July. And if there's a problem with that later, we'll come back and discuss that. But I think after meeting with the county manager today, we're gonna be meeting with the finance director, one day this week, and I believe that we'll have the money without coming to you and having to ask for that money. I know that was a little long, sorry.
Did we actually add the resolution under consent? There's a resolution.
There is a
y'all need to
resolution
approve.
that accompanies it, and that resolution simply just states that they've been awarded the $48,000 grant, and that it's $24,000 match. It's for mobile data terminals, and that's basically how they transmit their information that they take down in the car back to the,
We
back
just
to
need
their.
And our
make
in-car
sure this is
cameras that
approved.
you all have approved,
Right.
they can run through that. And basically what this means, we'll be able to get 8 new systems, and the ones that we have are anywhere from 10 to 15 years old, that we had from a grant from 10 to 15 years ago. And, this is a good way to get several, 8 of them, is how many we'll be getting.
Yeah, they
We'll
do.
get a motion to approve the consent agenda along with the stated resolution.
So moved.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Bill, second by Commissioner Gillespie. All in favor? We have appointments, so we talked about this Transportation Advisory Board, I believe, at our August meeting.
Yes.
They're the same 6 individuals, I believe.
Yes, they are, and
I'm
it's,
trying to get to them here.
yes, they're the same 6 that was
Herb,
presented.
Sherlin, or Angela Ramos,
Angela Ramos, Selma Sparks,
Shanbone,
Reed.
Reed Smithstead.
Yes.
Selma, oh, you got some Sparks already. One Tim Fish, yeah, Tim Fish. We get a motion to
And
approve.
Lisa Jambin.
Just one question, Mr. Chairman, is there any problem with not living in Macon County?
The Transportation Advisory Board, from what I understand, each of these candidates have been, evaluated and looked at by the transit, director, Kim Angel, and she has brought them forth. They, in her review, they meet the criteria for membership on this board. So there was a,
Living county?
if,
Keep County, like, county,
and
and
then-
you've been on it. Have you been on
They work in Franklin, looks like. There's a lady here from Haysville, but she's the administrator of Franklin House.
Franklin House and Transit work, that's a big client for the transit, is the Franklin House. They do it, yeah.
We do a motion to remove a portion of them. Well, there's another one from Clyde, that she's the, coordinator of Grandview Manor.
Right, and again, Grandview Manor,
For the past 7 years.
another big client of transit, we do a lot of
transport it back and forth between there. Again, and it is it's an advisory board, so it's kind of, you know.
This was created.
Yeah, I think the county is free to accept or reject your bonds.
Please refresh my memory. I've looked at too many letters, and what was the purpose of the board? I remember she stood right there and explained it to us, but I'm not recalling.
The Transit Advisory Board is to basically advise the commissioners on transit-related decisions in Macon County. You know,
Identify needs and to,
again,
It's basically a board for her to bounce.
when something comes up, they'll bring you advice, it's your advice to do whatever you so please.
I couldn't remember if there was a grant reason.
Right, sorry, I don't think so. It might be a requirement under federal or state.
Seems like that's what it was.
State does,
Yeah,
state
yeah.
does
Seems
require
like
you to
Right,
have
so state, yes. So,
That's what I was thinking.
and certain agencies have to have representation on here, that's why I say all these applications are vetted and through Ken.
Keep me on next year.
And you need to understand, this is an increase in the board size. It's not just 6 replacements, it's an
Six
increase. It's an increase in the board size.
We'll get a motion to approve the 6 individuals.
It's liaison there. You still liaison that thing? You bet. Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Higgins, second by Commissioner Shields. All in favor?
Aye.
Looks like we have 3 members on the Board of Health for another 3 years. We have Dr. Melissa Bell, pharmacist who's currently the chairman of the board. We have Teresa Murray, Realtor General Public, Dr. Jeff Todd, veterinarian. As liaison to that board, I would recommend all 3 of those have been very, very good members. So
Motion to approve.
motion by Commissioner Bill, second by Commissioner Shields, all in favor?
Aye.
Let's see, I know we have reasons for a closed session, I know it's very late, it's already 9:30. If we feel like we could be fresh back there and have good discussions, let's go do it, if not, procrastinated. Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Shields.
Take a closed session
Second by
for purpose
Commissioner
of
Bill.
attorney, preserving the attorney-client privilege, and to discuss personnel matters involving Macon County employee competence and qualities.
We're expecting action.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, guys.
All right, I'm going to end the live stream. I'm not going to start it up again whenever they come back. No, I'm good.